Hey guys, how's it going? This is Kevin Asani, and you are watching the Progressive Square. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you guys. We have a lot of interesting topics to cover, as usual. Before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know to please check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/ProgBlacksmith. If you can become a patron, it would be greatly appreciated. Also, for more information about this podcast, check out #TheProgSquare on Twitter. That will direct you to all of my live broadcasts on Periscope, as well as every segment I post on YouTube. So let's get right to the first story here. As many of you know, Senator Bernie Sanders recently had a little bit of a health scare. He ended up having a heart attack. Now the initial reporting was it was not a heart attack. It was he just had stents put into his heart to help a blocked artery, and that's how most of the early reporting was. And then eventually, after he got out of the hospital, or maybe around the time that he got out of the hospital, he the media started reporting that he had a heart attack, and then, but it ended up really being like a kind of a mild heart attack. It was nothing serious, because he already got out of the hospital like a couple days later, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. And the media is mostly just blowing it up into something that it's honestly really not. And they're trying to get headlines for the most part, as usual, which isn't surprising coming from the media. But nevertheless, I wanted to cover an article here that was that kind of went into the details of exactly what happened. Again, he did end up having a heart attack, but it was a very minor heart attack or type of heart attack. I'm not exactly sure what the name of the actual attack was or is, but it's starts with an M. I'm not exactly sure on the name. I'm not a very good at like technical terms like that. So if you guys want to look it up and comment on it in the comment section or something, you can do that, or maybe I'll put it in the description box or something. But let's get into one of the articles that was covering exactly what happened here, and then we'll just kind of discuss it on as we're reading here. So the article that I'm reading is from NBCnews.com, and the title is "Bernie Sanders Cancels Campaign Events After Medical Procedure for Blocked Artery." 2020 candidate Senator Bernie Sanders was hospitalized Tuesday in Las Vegas and underwent a significant medical procedure after a blockage was found in one of his arteries. His campaign said Wednesday. Sanders, who is 78 years old, has canceled all of his campaign events until further notice. And then quoting Jeff Weaver, who's a senior advisor to Bernie, says during a campaign event yesterday evening, Senator Sanders experienced some chest discomfort. Following medical evaluation and testing, he was found to have a blockage in one artery, and 2 stents were successfully inserted. And then it says, Weaver continues and says Sanders is conversing and in good spirits. He will be resting up over the next few days. We are canceling his events and appearances until further notice, and we will continue to provide appropriate updates. So I believe the heart attack, or the issue, the chest pains and stuff happened around, I think it was October 1st, I believe, or maybe September 30th, October 1st, sometime around there. And then he ended up going to the hospital around that time. It was either October 1st or maybe October 2nd. And then he was released, I believe, yesterday. And so the issue that I want to talk about here is not Bernie Sanders' heart, because I don't believe that he has heart issues. And before I get into what I the kind of the meat of what I wanted to get into, I wanted to read you guys a part of a piece here that was released in when was it released? It was released in 2016, and this was a New York Times article talking about the kind of other health issues that Bernie has had, which haven't been serious, but let me read it here. It says, so this is from a New York Times article in 2016. It says, among the ailments for which Mr. Sanders has been treated over the years are gout, mild elevation of cholesterol, an underactive thyroid gland for which he takes hormone replacement therapy, and inflammation of out patches in the colon known as diverticulitis. Mr. Sanders has also been treated for superficial skin cancers, lower back strain, and laryngitis from acid reflux. He has had surgery to remove the cyst in his vocal cord and laparoscopic repair of a hernia on both sides of his lower abdomen. And then referring to and this is what the Dr. Moynihan, one of the doctors that I guess examined him, obviously, that's what he wrote. And he says he did not list the surgery dates, but Mr. Sanders was widely reported to have had an outpatient hernia surgery. So that's mentioned a little bit earlier there. So nothing serious. Bernie hasn't had any kind of serious health issues up until he had this issue with his heart. And so Bernie gave, he kind of responded on Twitter to, people that were telling him, feel better and everything. He says, thanks for all the well wishes. I'm feeling good. I'm fortunate to have good health care and great doctors and nurses helping me to recover. None of us know when a medical emergency might affect us, and no one should fear going bankrupt if it occurs. Medicare for all with an exclamation point. And then it says, and then so that was on the 2nd, October 2nd. The next day, he sent out another tweet, and he said, I'm looking forward to sharing our vision for transforming this country at the next debate. I am lucky to have great health care, but millions of Americans are not. Some 87 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. This is unacceptable to me. We need Medicare for all. So clearly, Bernie is taking the smart strategy of making this issue about how other people are going through obviously the predicament of not having Medicare for all, or just not having a decent health care in general. And that's a very good angle to take it from the campaign and from Bernie himself. And so what I was going to say before was that my issue is not the fact that I'm worried about Bernie Sanders having a heart attack or having health issues, because I don't think he has any serious health issues, and we just covered that. He hasn't had anything significant up until he had this heart attack, mild heart attack, heart condition, or not heart condition, but heart, like chest pains. So, and when you put stents into the heart, to block the artery, you end up actually feeling much better. Now, nobody is denying Bernie Sanders is old. Nobody is denying that he may have some issues with his health. But this is the first serious issue he's had, and the stents end up making you feel much better after you put them in. And my feeling is that he's going to be okay after this. Now, like I said, I don't think Bernie Sanders' health is an issue. The problem is he has already been attacked by the media for being old. And it's always been bullshit. But now that they have confirmed health issues, add some meat to their claims, on top of people saying that when you're president, your health deteriorates faster due to all the work and effort you put into the job. I feel like that's not politically, it's not going to help him. So when you look at politically, this whole thing is not helping Bernie. Now, again, a lot of the coverage of Bernie has always been really bad. This could end up not having much of an effect, but it also can have an effect. And it's just, my fear is that it's going to be something that they're going to pounce on, and they're going to use it to just attack him more. And considering the fact that there are some people out there who are worried about the age and the health of a candidate, they're going to go out there and be like, oh, well, he's so old. And, the media always talks about him being old. And then he's so, I don't know, now he has this health issue, so now we have to be even more worried about it. So people freak out about this stuff constantly. Ultimately, they don't really care about the policies. They just want somebody that's fit for office, and that's not even mentally fit. That's physically fit too. And honestly, if there was another Bernie Sanders out there was another young Bernie Sanders running, and that's not Elizabeth Warren. But if there was, a younger version of him, obviously I would support that person. But unfortunately, there isn't a younger version of Bernie Sanders out there. And so, a lot of voters out there thinking that, oh, he can go just endorse Elizabeth Warren, whatever. He can go endorse Pete Buttigieg, whatever. That's going to be the same thing. Go endorse Joe Biden. Yeah, give me a fucking break. Nobody's going to want to do that. Nobody wants an alternative to Bernie Sanders, unless he's on his fucking deathbed. And even then, people are gonna support him. A lot of people will go out there and support a fucking dead corpse of Bernie Sanders instead of going and voting for Pete Buttigieg or whatever, Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren. So. This isn't an issue among Bernie Sanders supporters because we're not worried about Bernie Sanders dying because we're not under the impression that that's going to happen. If that was really going to happen, he would have said something. His campaign would have said something. He would have completely suspended his campaign and dropped out. That's not happening yet. So unless something even worse happens, which I don't expect it to, then he's not going anywhere. And people that are just telling him to drop out are, they're delusional and they just want to find a way to give an easier road to Elizabeth Warren, who already has her issues as it is. And regardless of how high she is in the polls, that doesn't mean that she's automatically going to go and beat Donald Trump, and let alone even win this primary against Joe Biden, who's even worse than Elizabeth Warren. So, now, when it comes to the situation with Bernie again, it's possible that this matter could get him sympathy among voters due to the fact that he will be coming back and campaigning, which I think he already is. And but people will still bring up how he had these issues to begin with, and the age question will constantly come up, and especially in future debates. Now that's the issue. The main issue is the fact that not just that the media is going to talk about it, but the fact that you're going to have a debate where people are going to harp away, the whatever journalists or the people ask the questions, the hosts or whatever, they're going to be harping away on it, just hitting him just again and again. Do you have health issues? Do you have this? Do you have that? And he's going to have to keep answering to that, and then he's going to get upset, understandably. Bernie's going to be like, can we talk about the issues? And people are going to say, why are you yelling so much? So it's no matter what he says, people are going to attack Bernie. No matter what he does, they're going to whine about him, either being too old or him yelling too much or him being angry. So it's no matter what, or his ideas are pie in the sky and ponies and fairy dust. So it's no matter what, Bernie Sanders is getting attacked from every side, no matter where it is. So just like he kind of demonstrated in his tweets, the goal of the Sanders campaign definitely needs to be to spin this in the best possible way, such as talking about how Bernie Sanders was able to get the best health care possible because he's obviously a politician. He's working for the government, so he essentially gets government health care, which is Medicare for all. And while regular people are still suffering because they don't have Medicare for all or single payer or, any kind of decent health care. And I think that's definitely, a good angle for him to just kind of keep going, kind of slamming the obviously the terrible healthcare system, and then using it to his advantage to talk about real issues. And I mean, obviously among the people that are just don't give a shit, the real issues are, oh, he's really old, or he's really whatever, he's not fit or fit to be in office or whatever. Because like that 2016 report said, he's never had any major issues. This was his first major issue, and that's after going and campaigning like crazy all over the country, working hard to get people to obviously agree with his ideology and his point of view. So Bernie is killing himself to go out there and get people to get on board with his movement, and they have. He has 1 million unique donors, so people that support him, and he's averaging, I heard somewhere, $19 per donation. I don't know if that's true, but if that's true, that's amazing. But before it was $27 an hour. So Bernie Sanders has no issues getting the support of people that support him and the people that love him. And the fact that he has 1 million unique donors is huge already. Nobody has anything close to that. I think Elizabeth Warren has 750,000, but even that's, I heard that's not even true. I heard it's even less than that. So, but the reality is that Bernie has never shown serious health issues until now. And even before that, candidates have run before on their have run regardless of how their health is. Some even having health issues even worse than Bernie. For example, Joe Biden has had an aneurysm. I think he's had actual multiple aneurysms. Hillary Clinton, she suffered concussions and then had so further concussion issues while she was Secretary of State, and then going into running for president too. And then not to mention President Bill Clinton and President George H.W. Bush both had stents put into their hearts to prevent any artery blockages in the future. So now, to be fair, you can say, well, Bernie Sanders was much older than Bill Clinton. I don't know how old George H.W. Bush was back then, but maybe he was. Let's just go with the possibility that he was older than both of them. Even if that were really the case, that doesn't automatically mean that it's like going to be worse for Bernie Sanders just because he's older. The issue is that the issue is like the whole kind of the people's perception, like, so I'm talking about people like voters, their perception just happens to be like, oh, well, the person is old, so that must mean that, he's going to drop dead because he's an almost 80-year-old man, and then he had a heart issue, and then he, that means that he's just done and he's a fucking vegetable now. Like, honestly, it's just total bullshit. And at the end of the day, people want to pretend as if, like, they want to pretend as if, like there was one person saying that, the multiple people, but there was one person that was saying that on Twitter who was like, oh, well, if you still, believe that Bernie Sanders should stay in this race, you don't really care about him. He needs to rest up and get a ton of rest, and he needs to, go take a break and stuff and not campaign and give his body some rest. Basically just like, don't campaign. So they were trying to basically find a way to make sure that he's not campaigning. But on top of it, saying that the people that want him to still keep campaigning don't care about him, and they just don't give a shit, and they're just worried about themselves. When in reality, we're going out there and we're standing up for this guy to go and pursue this obviously this dream of his to become president so that he can enact his policies. Obviously, this is something that he wants to do, and he's passionate about it, just like any other person that would run for president. So if anything, we're supporting something that he's doing. Now, you can obviously say that, hey, you got to save somebody from themselves, and you can go out there and tell somebody to go do something when they shouldn't be doing it, and that's fucked up. But ultimately, I'm pretty sure that a couple people on Twitter telling Bernie Sanders to drop out is not going to make that much of a difference. The fact that, again, he has 1 million unique donors and his policies are popular, that's the reason why he should stay in the race. Again, if he's on his deathbed, obviously we don't want him to get to his deathbed. We don't want him to be, dying to campaign. Now, that's his decision. He wants to do that, he can do that. We support him in anything that he wants to do, but we're not going to tell him to drop out, because there are no good options out there for progressives. And anybody who wants to say that Elizabeth Warren is a good option, you're delusional. That's not true at all. Elizabeth Warren is essentially another version of Barack Obama. If you look at it, like, let's say if she were to become president and, get into the White House and enact all her policies, it would be pretty much along the lines of Barack Obama. That's my opinion. And but when it comes to Bernie, he can actually push for something. He can push for policies that are progressive and policies that people love and have been demanding, and the rest of them just don't have anything close to that. So the whole point of just let Bernie drop out and just endorse somebody else, go endorse Biden or go endorse Elizabeth Warren or Buttigieg, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to hold the gun to people's head and probably kill them if you want to make them do that. So at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders is going to be staying in this race. He is not going anywhere, and the media coverage already has been fucking horrible. I saw an article today, and I'm going to post it in the description box below. There was this article from this guy. Apparently, he's like a poet or something, and he's like a Vermont native. I have never even heard of him. I don't know who the hell he is, but for some reason, CNN decided to give him this opinion, this op-ed piece, to write his feelings about Bernie Sanders. And basically, what this guy was saying was, "Oh, I'm a Vermont resident, and I love Bernie Sanders. I love what he's done. Blah blah blah." But I think that he needs to hand over the reins to Elizabeth Warren and tell her that she's going to, let everybody know that she's going to take over for the progressive, the progressive movement and push the progressive policies, and she's the person for America. Yeah, get the fuck out of here, man. That is not even close to what Bernie Sanders should be doing. Not right now, at least. I mean, if you want to look at it from the Democratic loyalist point of view, I mean, obviously that's what they want him to do. But like, even any kind of like objective, rational thinking person out there shouldn't think that Bernie Sanders should already drop out and give the reins over to Elizabeth Warren. We haven't even had a freaking primary yet. I don't understand what the point of that is. At least have a primary and see how people feel. And, people can point to all these different polls out there. Oh, look at this poll, showing Elizabeth Warren here and we're showing her there. Those, a lot of the times, they're pointing to national polls. Now, if you go state by state polls, Bernie Sanders is perfectly in the race. I covered this last week. On my last podcast, I mentioned how, Chris Cillizza, idiot from CNN, is talking about how, oh my God, Bernie Sanders is so low in the polls, blah, blah, blah. And then, he just picks out all these, cherry picks all these polls. And I was like, okay, I can cherry pick polls too. And I showed a bunch of polls that he's doing well in. I showed at least 5 polls that he's either in pretty much second place or higher. Even some of them in first, and that was like New Hampshire, South Carolina. I think the one that was Nevada. So yeah, anybody can go out there and say, "Oh, look how terrible Bernie Sanders is doing in the polls." And I've said this multiple times on the show, I don't put too much on, on polls, especially when it comes to national polls, because I don't feel like national polls truly get all the, I feel like they skew mostly in getting specific type of demographics that don't benefit the progressive candidates. And honestly, if anything, they kind of overshare on the kind of like the boomers, the boomer generation older. So they don't poll a lot of young people. Now, if you poll young people, all of them are going to want to support Bernie Sanders. And young people are the ones that are the future of this country. Myself, and then a bunch of other people that are millennials out there too. Millennials are the ones that are deciding what's going to be what's best for this country and what needs to happen for the future of this country. And Bernie Sanders has huge support among millennials. And if people want to keep denying him denying him his due regarding the support that he has, then you're basically fighting against reality, because at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders has the support among the people that are going to be alive for the next 50 to 100, not 100 years, but 50 to 75 years, essentially, if you want to, kind of ballpark it. But the media talking about, how Bernie Sanders is whatever, his health issues are this, and he's in trouble, and he's down in the polls, they're going to find every single possible reason to get him to drop out. And at the end of the day, Bernie Sanders is not going to drop out because his supporters, his most ardent supporters, myself included, do not want him to drop out because there is no other good option. And if people want to keep pushing that point, you're just going to keep motivating Bernie supporters to back him. And that's, you want to keep doing that, then okay. You obviously don't realize the momentum that you are building for Bernie Sanders to win states that people are already counting him out in. And for somebody like myself who's covering this kind of shit, constantly, wall to wall, always, looking up different, articles and looking at polls and, constantly getting news about what's happening, I know Bernie Sanders is a much better candidate than the media portrays him to be. And if they want to keep pushing this this kind of faux reality, this faux reality kind of point of view from the media, it's not, they're not gonna convince anybody. They're just gonna keep convincing their elitist friends and corporatist friends in DC and all the other kind of neoliberal type donors out there who are in love with the likes of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren. And those people are not the people that are going to be deciding what's going to be happening in this country. So you can keep doing what you're doing, but it's not going to work. So there was an LGBTQ forum that took place in, I believe, I don't know where it was located, but anyway, there was an LGBTQ forum that multiple candidates were supposed to attend, and Bernie Sanders was one of them, but he was unable to make it. And the person that was hosting this was a trans woman by the name of Angelica Ross. Apparently, she's a TV personality, I think. She's an actress. And she called what Bernie Sanders did a huge, quote, a huge misstep. So, just to be fair and be objective, I covered a story a few weeks back, about how a bunch of candidates like Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, weren't able to attend a climate forum, like a climate town hall covering climate change. And I said, I thought that was a huge misstep too. So, and to be fair, I think it depends. Like, listen, at the end of the day, climate change is a serious issue. That does not mean LGBTQ issues are not important, but Bernie Sanders has been, and this is something I'm going to get into, but Bernie Sanders has been an advocate for the LGBTQ community for many, many years. I covered last, I think it was my last episode, my last podcast, about how, he basically created a trans mecca in Burlington, Vermont, when he was mayor of Burlington. And he was so in favor of the LGBTQ movement that nobody else, and when nobody else was in favor, that that people all these years later are still, they're still, praising him for it. At least the progressives are. People that obviously hate him just hate him no matter what. But the people that know what's going on with Bernie Sanders and know where he stands on issues, obviously are embracing him for this. So. But the point is that if he is not attending a LGBTQ forum, that doesn't mean he's anti-gay rights. That doesn't mean he's anti-LGBTQ people. That's not even remotely what it is. So if he's missing this event, it's not like, oh my God, Bernie Sanders, has a horrible track record on gay rights and a horrible track record on LGBTQ rights. So I can't believe that he's missing this forum. Like, the people that are getting pissed about this are the people that are going to get pissed about anything that Bernie Sanders does, so that they can just jump all over it and portray it as being something terrible. Like I said before, climate change is a serious issue, and the issue of climate change, global warming, is just not covered enough in the media. It's not something that's talked about, and it's something that the corporatists and elitists ignore. And when Bernie Sanders decides to attend an event like this, while somebody like Elizabeth Warren and Joe Biden don't, that's a big issue. And it's not like I said before, I think I said this on my last episode. It's not like LGBTQ rights are going away. It's not like gay rights are going away. Again, Bernie Sanders not attending this event does not mean that he is anti, gay rights. He's in favor fully of gay rights. He was in favor of gay rights 30, 40 years ago when nobody was even talking about it. Hillary Clinton just came out in favor of gay rights in 2013. Same with Obama. I believe his may have been 2014 or 15. I don't know what Obama was, but all these other politicians that everybody's like all fawning over and loving, and so many people in the gay community love so much, these people just came out in favor of gay rights. Bernie Sanders was in favor of gay rights 30, 40 years ago. They don't say shit other than the people that already know about him and know who what he stands for. But everybody else wants to portray him as if he doesn't care about gay rights, including this person calling it a major misstep or a huge misstep, whatever. So I just wanted to cover this article here. So this article from theguardian.com refers to Angelica Ross saying a huge misstep. Angelica Ross on Sanders' LGBTQ forum no-show. And then there's a part of this article that I'm going to quote here, and it says, there was a question from the reporter or the journalist in the Guardian article. It says, what are your thoughts on candidates like Beto O'Rourke and Bernie Sanders skipping the event, referring to the LGBTQ forum? Sanders will also miss the next LGBTQ forum in October. So Angelica Ross says, I was disappointed to not see all of the candidates here. I was further disappointed to hear this was not the only LGBTQ forum or event Bernie was making other commitments for. You don't show up for both of our LGBTQ events. That's obviously telling us all we need to know. So this person has already decided, like they obviously already had a view of Bernie Sanders as supposedly being this anti-gay rights person, which is ridiculous, obviously, just like I explained. and they obviously don't know anything about Bernie Sanders, but they also have a preconceived notion about Bernie Sanders from, or at least what's said about Bernie Sanders, whether it's in the media or whether it's on social media, about his supporters as supposedly not caring about identity politics, and then him not caring about identity politics just because he said that identity politics is an important thing that should be focused on so much in 2016. All of a sudden, everybody thinks that he doesn't care about anybody's identity. So it's just stupid, and they're pulling it out of their ass. They're making a big deal out of one quote that he said all the way in 2016, and just because he wanted to focus on like specific policy like issues and positions, and because he didn't want to focus on identity, they think that he hates all other people's identities that's not like male, essentially. So anyway, it says, why do you, so they ask him again, or ask Angelica Ross again, why do you think Bernie has decided to skip the forums? Not sure why they're focusing so much on Bernie, but it says, I do have some inside information because I did try to do some digging as to why Bernie was not here. I sent out some questions to folks who were surrounding his camp, and that's when I found out Bernie had prior commitments. I'm going to risk being super real here for a second. When you're on the campaign trail, what's happening a lot, and what a lot of these candidates have to avoid, is being seen as looking for a photo op, to be seen in certain communities and spaces. I heard that he was not only visiting historically black colleges and universities, but also visiting an old black barbershop. I'm already struggling as a black trans advocate to get folks in my own black community to understand that being black and being LGBTQ are not mutually exclusive. What I hope Bernie would learn is you don't have to pander to just one aspect of the black community. If he would have been at the LGBTQ forum tonight, he would have seen we were talking about issues affecting people of color. I think it was a huge misstep on his part, and I'm not here for any of the excuses I say. Make it up to me, make it up to us. Like she's saying that she doesn't want somebody to say that. Okay, but anyway. Yeah, so listen, I mean, again, Bernie Sanders is not just trying to cater to the black community. When Bernie Sanders was running in 2016, everybody was saying, oh, he doesn't have any black supporters. Nobody in the black community likes him. He has so many white people supporting. He has so many people that, that are white bros and white, white people and white pro-white supremacists, whatever I don't know what people were saying. It was ridiculous. Just like everybody's white that loves him. That's pretty much was the narrative in 2016, even 2017 and 2018. All these people were just repeating the same old fucking bullshit, and they're still doing it to this day. And all of a sudden now, because Bernie Sanders has black support, now they don't like it. And there was even a tweet that went viral from this idiot Nate Silver, he's a pollster guy. He works he writes for 538.com. It's a publication. I think the New York Times operates it, or it's operated under New York Times. But he's the main writer for them, and he goes out there and he says something along the lines of, it's not that big of a deal that Bernie Sanders has blacks, supporters from the black community. They're just residue. He literally called the supporters that he has among African Americans residue. So like residue supporters. Nate Silver actually said this. It got so much attention on social media. The guy is such a jackass, and deservedly so. He got a lot of shit for it because that's a ridiculous thing to say, and it's honestly really racist coming from a white guy. All the people talking about how Bernie's a white guy and says things that people, the black community supposedly gets offended by. And then all of a sudden when there's a white guy says it, nobody says shit because Bernie Sanders is being attacked. So all the, people that, all the black people in the black community that hate Bernie Sanders, you don't hear them saying shit. So they're just like, yeah, who cares? Bernie's being attacked. That's wonderful. That's what I wanted to hear. Even if it's from another white dude that calls black people residue. So this is what people do. And there's so much hypocrisy when it comes to Bernie Sanders. There's this standard for Bernie Sanders where he has to meet these absurd levels of like acceptance, that if he doesn't do exactly what the people specific people say, whether it's the black community, whether it's the white community, whether it's females, whether it's, Clinton, former Hillary Clinton voters, moderate, left of center, neoliberal center type voters. Like, he needs to always fit this standard of catering to people that like are supposedly like hurt by what he says about them, or the politicians that they support, or what his supporters say about those people or the politicians they support. So it's like they get outraged about everything. Bernie Sanders has to go out there and he has to be like a perfect angel. He can't criticize anybody without somebody getting fucking triggered and getting upset and making a federal case out of it. So that's just been typical. It's nothing surprising for those of us who are familiar with it, but it's just absurd how it just continues on and on and on, and people keep getting upset, finding ways to get upset about Bernie Sanders just because they want to find things to attack him on. So anyway, going back to this Angelica Ross person, so apparently she, according to an article from out.com, so I guess that's like a pro gay or LGBTQ publication, it says Angelica Ross leaves Twitter after abuse by Trump-Sanders vote supporters. So right from the get-go, you can already see from the tagline of the article, the headline of the article, they're already trying to, as they usually do, something I've referenced before, they try and lump Bernie Sanders supporters with Trump supporters. They try and pretend as if they're the same because they're all white and they're all bros and they hate black people. It's ridiculous. I mean, that's typical, and this comes from the person that says, "Oh yeah, you shouldn't care about just the black community. You should care about, the LGBTQ community as well, and the people that are LGBTQ and black." Okay, well, you're obviously, your attempt at pretending. This is, to be fair, this is from the person that wrote the article. Her name is Serena Sonoma. So pretending as if as if the black community is, not important to Bernie Sanders, and he hates them just like the Trump supporters hate black people. And then I want to just read kind of a snippet, a couple paragraphs here from this article from out.com. It says, Angelica Ross says she is taking a break from social media after a flurry of online harassment from trolls and outrage stemming from comments she made about Bernie Sanders and trans women following the LGBTQ forum in which Ross was a host. Ahead of the debates, the Pose and American Horror Story star questioned Bernie Sanders' absence. Sanders, who was the only major candidate to sit out an LGBTQ event, cited, quote, scheduling conflicts via a spokesperson as the reason for his absence. The candidate had prior commitments at historically black colleges and universities in North Carolina, as well as a tour of the International Civil Rights Center and Museum in Greensboro. And then so following everything that kind of happened, so for her deciding to leave Twitter, she posted on, I guess, her account, and then I don't know. Yeah, okay. So she posted on her account saying that, she posted on her account, so this is her official Twitter account. She says, so I spoke to The Guardian after the LGBTQ forum and held back nothing, spoke of the huge misstep from absent candidates as well as how I feel about my brother Karoma Brown's recent backlash. I don't know who that is. So what ended up happening is a couple people did respond to Angelica Ross on Twitter. And they told her how they felt about what she feels about Bernie Sanders, her opinion on Bernie Sanders and his position on the LGBTQ rights and the gay community, and gay rights. And so one tweet. And these are supposedly the tweets that are attacking her and smearing her, and the reason why she decided to leave Twitter. So one of the tweets from one of the Bernie Sanders supporters, I believe there's 3 of them, it says, so are you insinuating Bernie does not care about the LGBTQ community? If so, then you are using your platform to spread misinformation about a man who has always been on the side of the LGBTQ community. You don't have to like him, but don't play loose with the truth. That's true. It's a perfectly legitimate thing to say. The next person says, to question Bernie Sanders' stance on LGBTQ rights is the most ridiculous thing ever and shows your bias against him. He's been an ally before it was cool and socially acceptable, while every other candidate just hopped on the equality train. Warren was a Republican not too long ago. Also true. And then the last one here. So this is a two-part tweet from the same person. It says, so it's homophobic to have prior obligations? I love how she made it a point to attack Sanders, but not the other candidates who couldn't attend, but continued to praise Warren, who used to be against gender-affirming surgeries for trans men and women. I did not know that. That's interesting. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not calling any Democratic candidate homophobic. I just don't like how Angelica Ross assumed Bernie to be homophobic by charging him with this minor offense. By her definition, a lot of candidates are transphobic, including the ones she praises. So that's perfectly legitimate. Every single one of these things that these Bernie supporters said is perfectly fine. So again, their attempt at lumping in these Sanders supporters with Trump supporters is ridiculous, because these are perfectly normal things to say in response to what happened. There was another tweet sent out by The Advocate magazine. I believe that's also a pro-LGBTQ magazine publication. And the tweet says, one of the reasons I'm here tonight is because the Trump administration is harming transgender Americans. Angelica Ross opens the LGBTQ forum with a rousing speech about why we continue to fight for equality. So, and then let's see, this is... I guess so. Apparently, Ross invoked Trump. So as they did in the Advocate article. I'm sorry, the Advocate tweet. They quote her, and then this is a portion of the article from the Advocate, and it says, one of the reasons I'm here tonight is because the Trump administration is harming transgender Americans. She said, so let's just review. Why don't we just a handful of those moves? The administration, so she says, why don't we, so let's just review just a handful of those moves. It says the administration moved to revoke trans healthcare and discrimination protections. They made it more difficult for homeless trans people to access shelters, and every education secretary, Betsy DeVos, however you say her name, her decision, these sentences are really, they don't make a lot of sense. Why would it say in every education? No, it says in Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, however you say her name, her decision to stop investigating the complaints of trans students hurts trans students across the country, when Secretary DeVos should be helping to make sure every student can learn. And it says the majority of the over 150 responses to the Advocate's tweet of that moment came from Trump supporters and religious zealots. And I'm going to read a couple of the responses here. But yeah, I'm sorry. That was just a little bit of a weird phrased sentence there. I guess they were quoting her directly, and they ended up quoting every word that she said when it wasn't grammatically correct. But anyway, so Trump supporters ended up responding in many disgusting and offensive ways, which is not surprising coming from these people. One person says, as someone who has supported the gay community for decades, has a gay sister, and had a living gay brother, and has countless LGBTQ friends and associates, to say POTUS's administration is harming transgender Americans is not correct. Feel free to dispute or correct me. Hashtag don't lie and don't deceive. So that was actually one of the worse ones out of all the ones that I'm going to be reading. I'll read a few more here. The next one says, are you a man or a woman? Guess you're just nuts. Yeah, good one. Transgenderism calls God a liar. It says, I know better than God, and I was born the wrong sex. I was born a man, but identify as a woman, and vice versa. These lies come right from the pit of hell, and LGBTQ wants all to embrace those beliefs as acceptable. No, no, no. Okay. Next one says, just more proof that they're actually suffering from mental illness, and we're celebrating it. Wow. What a prick. The president has done nothing to harm anyone. Yeah, President Trump has been a fucking angel. You liberals would just love to see this country fail just so you can say you were right all along. Orange man bad. How sad. By not telling them their delusions about gender are right. So asking that as a question. And then that's when Angelica Ross responds by saying, going to take a break from social media for a while and let my team run my accounts. So I just read you those, 4 tweets? One of the tweets wasn't that bad. It was just saying that you're a liar, essentially. But all the other tweets that I just read were horrible. Those were like terribly, anti-trans, anti-gay tweets there. And so, but that's the thing. When you're comparing that to the, you're lumping those people in with the Bernie Sanders campaign and saying, oh, the Trump supporters and Bernie supporters are attacking me. That's not even close to true. Compare that to what the Sanders supporters said. All they said is that you are, you're misrepresenting Bernie's record on LGBTQ rights and gay rights, and they're calling you out for it. That's it. That's all they're saying. They're just saying that you shouldn't be lying about Bernie Sanders' record. Now, when it comes to Donald Trump, that is the things that she is saying about Trump is not wrong. He has treated the trans community badly. He's even treated trans soldiers, so members of the military that are trans, he's even treated them like shit too. So Donald Trump has not been a friend of the gay community. Now, there might be some gay people that are out there that are supporters of him, but that's the same thing as the black community, the small number of the black community and Latino community that support Trump. It's not very many of them, but that's not representative of his entire movement, because the majority of his movement are a bunch of right-wing Christian, white zealots. And obviously he has the support of, KKK members, white supremacists, neo-Nazis, all that stuff. So pretending again, that's a completely different demographic of people, different type of people. Just these comments show that these people are not even remotely close to what Bernie Sanders supporters are. We're not vile and hateful like that at all. But somehow, for some reason, people just seem to think that because Bernie Sanders supporters are so outspoken, that automatically means that they're like vile and, like I said, vile and, hateful and all that stuff. It's just ridiculous, man. That's not even close to true about Bernie supporters, and it's just a made up myth, and it's a made up characterization of people that truly do care about the country and are pro gay rights. They're pro peace, pro nonviolence. They're not racist. They're in favor of black rights and civil rights and all that stuff. In favor of gay rights, all that, women's rights, everything. So at the end of the day, this person is just trying to. This Angelica Ross person is trying to. She has a serious victim complex, and she's trying to pretend as if the Bernie Sanders, supporters in the community of, the people that support Bernie Sanders, are going after her and smearing her and attacking her. And just because Trump supporters did it too, somehow that makes them the same as, that makes us Bernie Sanders supporters the same as the Trump supporters. It's not even remotely true. So if you can't tell the difference between that, then that's your problem. And honestly, that whole narrative seems to come from a media. Honestly, a media just kind of misrepresentation, and the fact that Bernie Sanders supporters dare to be passionate about their candidate and care about the issues and speak very openly and freely, somehow that makes them the same as Trump supporters. And I take very serious offense to that, because I completely disagree with that. I am very offended by that, because it's ridiculous. I do not want to be compared to Trump supporters. And the sad thing is that a lot of people that hate Bernie Sanders compare him and his supporters to Trump and his supporters. And that's truly, it's so bad. Like that's such a bad thing to say, and it's completely ridiculous, and it's not true at all. So the people that are saying that, shame on you, because you should not be smearing people that are trying to get all Americans, decent health care, getting them a decent education, getting them decent paying jobs, well-paying jobs, trying to help get a candidate into, or supporting a candidate and helping a candidate become president who's going to help all people, whether it's poor people, middle class people. He's going to be making sure the super rich pay their fair share. Bernie Sanders is doing something that's going to be helping all Americans, and the people that are going against him and hate him only hate him for his identity. and only hate him because he's a white man and he talks a certain way and he sounds angry. There was an article, there was a video that came out recently, released by this great I think he's a videographer. He makes videos and then like edits them, and his name is Matt Orfilia, I believe his name is, and he released this great pro Bernie ad. He made it, I think it's like a 5 or 6 minute ad, and he released it, and it's gotten tons of millions and millions of views, and it's showing how all the media is going after Bernie Sanders in like the most unfair way possible, and saying that he's angry and he's gruff and he screams a lot, he doesn't listen to people, and he talks over people and he yells at people, and then it shows videos of him going and listening to people's problems regarding medical debt and the fact that they can't get decent health care and they're dying from lack of health care, and they're suffering in multiple other ways. They're drowning in student loan debt. They can't have decent jobs because they can't find a decent job that pays them well. A woman that tried to get some insulin for her son or her daughter, one of her children, because her other child died from the fact that a vial of insulin cost too much. Bernie Sanders went with this woman to Canada to get cheaper insulin because it costs so much less there and than it does in America, where they price gouge the shit out of you. So Bernie Sanders, obviously, if he didn't give a shit about other people, then why is he going out there and helping people with all of their issues, all of their problems with, like I said, all these issues with healthcare, student loan debt, lack of jobs, all that stuff. He's helping all these people with all these things, and then the media wants to talk about how he's too angry, and you should be fucking angry. Bernie Sanders is angry because the fucking country is screwing people over. Why shouldn't he be angry? Why should Bernie Sanders go out there and portray everything as being, unicorns and rainbows? It's not like that. We've got serious issues in this country, and Bernie Sanders seems to be the only person who wants to address it and who is going out of his way to address it, while everybody else wants to just portray, unity and we have to get together and stuff like that. Bullshit, man. That is not the solution for our problems. The solution is to go out there and show how angry we are about all the problems that we're having in this country, and the only person doing that is Bernie Sanders. So there was an article that came out from the Washington Post, and they decided to give credit to Elizabeth Warren for something that Bernie Sanders did. I mean, honestly, that's not too surprising, especially since it's coming from the Washington Post. But the whole kind of concept and existence of Elizabeth Warren constantly taking Bernie Sanders' position and pretending it's hers is a common phenomena that a lot of Bernie Sanders, including myself, have noticed, and I've covered it. I've covered multiple times how Elizabeth Warren has been, abandoning progressive values while pretending that she supports them, especially when it comes to the issue of Medicare for all, student loan debt. She's doing everything she's doing is like a half measure, or she's just not doing it at all. And while Bernie Sanders is going the full length, he's going all the way. He's taking the football into the end zone. He wants to take the football into the end zone and solve all of our issues fully and up to the point of getting, of fixing them, because people are suffering so badly. And Elizabeth Warren is pretty much doing half or 75% of that, essentially, which is not even close to as good enough. Good enough would be like 95%, So the title of this article is from the Washington Post is Sanders proposes sweeping wealth tax, an idea highlighted by Warren, so Elizabeth Warren. And the article is from Sean Sullivan and Jeff Stein. So as many people know, Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. Bernie Sanders called out Jeff Bezos for not paying his Amazon employees, because obviously Bezos owns Amazon, not paying his Amazon employees a decent wage, and he finally got him to pay Amazon employees $15 an hour. So it's not surprising that the Washington Post reporters and so-called journalists come out here and smear him. There's this other person, Jennifer Rubin, who constantly smears Bernie Sanders too. So he's got tons of people there that are just hate him, and they especially hate the fact that he called out the Washington Post, as he did a few weeks ago or a month ago. He was at one of his rallies and he said, the Washington Post, owned by Jeff Bezos, likes to come after me a lot. And the whole fucking media just lost their fucking mind, as they usually do, about anything Bernie Sanders said. So in this case, this is not a surprising move, but it's also ridiculous how they're trying to give Bernie Sanders credit for something that Warren did. And I'm going to show you exactly why that's complete bullshit. But let's read the article here first, and then we'll discuss it as we go along. Senator Bernie Sanders proposed a tax on the wealthiest Americans on Tuesday as a way to help underwrite his slate of ambitious and costly policies, offering his own version of an idea one of his toughest rivals has campaigned on aggressively, and pushing it further. The Democratic presidential candidate and an independent from Vermont offered his blueprint after Senator Elizabeth Warren, who has surged in the polls, made a wealth tax one of her signature ideas. Her crowds regularly chant 2 cents at her rallies when she brings up the idea, a reference to how much the wealthy would have to pay on the dollar. Sanders' proposed wealth tax is more aggressive than Warren's and would raise more money. Warren's plan calls for levying a 2% tax on wealth above $50 million, as well as a 3% tax on wealth above $1 billion. The relatively high threshold has helped Warren fend off critics that large farms could be exposed to the tax. And then here it says, Sanders would hit more people with the tax and would also significantly increase how much it would take from the very wealthiest, following a pattern in which he has sought to stake out the leftward boundary of the Democratic Party when it comes to policy proposals. Sanders' plan introduces a new 1% wealth tax on those earning over $32 million, and then increases that rate in steps until it reaches 8% for those with more than $10 billion. So I wanted to stop right there and say I don't think that's good enough. I don't think Bernie Sanders wanting to put a 1% tax on people over $32 million and then an 8% tax on $10 billion is not enough. That is not good enough. I am on the record as saying, and I said this before, I am on the record saying that Bernie Sanders needs to, he should be proposing at least a 1% or 2% tax, and in an effort to one-up Elizabeth Warren and truly show that he's a progressive, he needs to put a 1 or 2% tax on people making $10 million and above. $10 million, not $32 million. That's just not enough. And he wants to do 8%, which is good, but 8% over $10 billion? She's doing 3% over 3% over $1 billion, and then 2% over $50 million. Honestly, both of their plans suck. Both Bernie and Elizabeth Warren's plans are not good. They need to be a hell of a lot better. That Bernie, I would expect much better, because I didn't know. I initially didn't know until I read this article, until I read this piece that he was doing 32 million, but I thought he was doing 2% over 32 million. He's only doing 1% over 32 million. That's not enough. He needs to be a lot more ambitious than that. I don't know why. Coming from somebody like Bernie, I would have expected much better, but. Anyway, so let's go on to the next paragraph here. It says, Sanders' aides noted that the senator has spoken of a wealth tax for decades, including proposing it as a possible funding source for his Medicare for All plan. In 1997, Sanders wrote that it was high time to establish a tax on wealth similar to those that exist in most European countries. However, there is no guarantee that Warren or Sanders, if elected, could push such a far-reaching new tax through Congress. When it comes to wealth taxes, the impact on the nation's biggest fortunes would be profound. Bill Gates estimated to have $107 billion in wealth, would, under Sanders' plan, pay at least an additional $8 billion annually to the federal government. Sanders' campaign says the wealth of billionaires overall would be halved under his proposal. The biggest difference with Warren's plan is that Sanders's would more directly target the fortunes of billionaires and multi-billionaires. Zuckerman noted on Twitter that Sanders's plan would make it much harder to remain a multi-billionaire durably. But he said that if Sanders' tax had been enacted in the 1980s, billionaires' share of the national wealth would still have increased. That means Sanders' plan would stop short of a maximum income plan, favored by some on the left, although Sanders has come out in favor of that as a long-term goal, telling the New York Times, "I don't think that billionaires should exist." That position follows months of debates in left-leaning circles over whether Democrats should push taxes high enough to eliminate all billion-dollar fortunes, an idea championed, for example, by an aide to first-term Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So that's, I mean, again, I like that Bernie. I like that Bernie's. He introduced a plan. That's good. I like that it's obviously, wanting to tax people that, so at a lower number, 32 million instead of her 50 million. But he needs, it shouldn't be 1%. It should be 2%. And that's the moderate position. The progressive position, in my opinion, he should be going as low as 10 million. Because if you think, and that's not saying everybody, that's not even saying the people that make $10 million, everything that you make above 10 million is going to be taken away. It's only 2% or 1%. It's a tiny percentage. And that, I think that would have still been good. So that means the first $9.99 million you make, you're not going to be taxed on it. So you're not going to be taxed for that first 9.99 million. And once you hit 10 million, then you get taxed at a higher rate. And it's a tax hike of, in this case, 1% or however much it is. But obviously, like I said, Bernie's not doing 10 million, he's doing 32 million. And then he wants to do above 10 billion, he wants to do 8%, which is decent, but that number, again, is too high. Like, that should be 1 billion. You know what I'm saying? 8% above 1 billion, while Warren's is 3% above 1 billion. So again, their plans suck. I think, honestly, his sucks almost as much as hers does, because, like I said, he's lowering the tax that he wants to do on the first 32 million is fine, but after that, he wants to tax 1%. She wants to tax 2% after the first 50 million. And then after the first 1 billion, she wants to tax 3%. After the first 10 billion, he wants to tax 8%. So that's just not good enough, man. I'm not in favor of something like that. He needs to go a hell of a lot further than that. 10 million is just, I'm just throwing out a number, but I think that would be a good way to start. And knowing Bernie, knowing progressives, you need to shoot for the stars in these situations. You shouldn't be shooting for low hanging fruit, And honestly, I think that's what he's doing here. But that's not the main issue I want to talk about. I just wanted to put that out there so people know my position on what I think the wealth tax should be. I'm glad that Bernie is doing it. I'm glad to some extent that Elizabeth Warren is doing it, because at least she's showing that she cares about, going after the super bitch. But obviously their plans could be better. But when it comes to this whole idea that Elizabeth Warren, proposed a wealth tax first, and Bernie Sanders is just, following her lead or copying her or something, that's bullshit. How do I know that? I know that because of this. So if you guys are just listening, on the screen it says, this is an article. This is an article from sanders.senate.gov. So this is Bernie Sanders' official Senate page, government website for Bernie Sanders specifically. It says Sanders proposes a wealth tax, and then Piketty, and then there's a semicolon that says Piketty and Reich applaud. So referring to two economists who praise Bernie Sanders' wealth tax. He proposed this wealth tax. This article is from September 6th of 2014. So more than 5 years ago, Bernie Sanders introduced a wealth tax in the Senate. See, this is the smart thing about Bernie. He proposes this legislation in the Senate so that when he's running for president like he is now, just like he did same thing in 2016, he can say, oh, look, I proposed this legislation in the Senate, so I was, way ahead of the 8 ball, I wasn't behind the 8 ball, I was way ahead of the 8 ball, and I put out these policies as legislation, and whatever, they were supported by this person or not supported by that person, referring to like the different other politicians that supported. Did Elizabeth Warren support this? Because she was in the Senate at the time she came into the Senate in 2012. Was she in the Senate? I'm sorry. Did she support this when she was in the Senate? If she did, she would have put that out there. They would have mentioned that in the article to which they did not mention. So as far as I know, Elizabeth Warren did not support a wealth tax back then. She did not support a wealth tax up until recently. And Bernie Sanders has been supporting this all along. So I just want to get into a little bit of the details from this Sanders.senate.gov article about the wealth tax. It says, with the wealth gap in the United States growing and greater already than in any other major country, Senator Bernie Sanders on Saturday called for a progressive estate tax on multimillionaires and billionaires. Quoting him, it says, a nation will not survive morally or economically when so few have so much while so many have so little. We need a tax system which asks the billionaire class to pay its fair share of taxes and which reduces the obscene degree of wealth inequality in America, Sanders said in a speech to the Vermont AFL-CIO annual convention in South Burlington, Vermont. The growing wealth gap in the U.S. is worse now than at any time since 1928, the year before the Great Depression began. The top 1% of Americans own more wealth than the bottom 90%. The richest 400 Americans have amassed more than $2 trillion in wealth, a sum greater than all of the assets of the bottom 150 million Americans combined. That's nearly half of Americans. One family, the Waltons of Walmart fame, owns more wealth than the bottom 40% of Americans. Wow, I think it's even higher. I think it might be even a 45% from something I read earlier. And then it continues on here. It says, while the rich are becoming richer, more Americans live in poverty today than at any time in our nation's history. Half of all Americans have less than $10,000 in savings. We have the highest rate of childhood poverty, 22%, than any other major country. Sanders said the fairest way to reduce wealth inequality, lower the $17 trillion national debt, and pay for investments in infrastructure, education, and other neglected national priorities would be to enact a progressive estate tax on the wealthiest Americans, the top 0.25%. And the last paragraph here says, under his proposal, 99.75% of Americans would not pay a penny more in estate taxes. For those who would pay more, the tax on estates valued from $3.5 million to $10 million would be 40%. There would be a 50% tax on estates worth $10 million to $50 million. And a 55% tax levy on estates worth more than $50 million. A 10% surtax would be applied on estates worth more than $1 billion, a category that today includes fewer than 500 million American families. The bill also would close estate tax loopholes that have allowed the wealthy to avoid an estimated $100 billion since 2000 on all states. The first 3.5 million for individuals and 7 million for couples would be exempt from federal taxes. So Bernie Sanders has been on top of this issue. He has been pushing for these things from I pretty much from the get-go. From the very get-go he got into Congress, he's been talking about all different kinds of issues. You guys can go on YouTube, or even go on C-SPAN if you want to find more. Go on YouTube or C-SPAN and find all the different speeches that Bernie Sanders, I don't know, millions, but mostly hundreds or maybe a thousand speeches where Bernie Sanders has given on either the floor of the Congress or on the floor of the Senate, where he has gone after millionaires and billionaires. He's gone after the military-industrial complex. He's gone after money in politics, the corrupt system, Citizens United, McCutcheon versus the McCutcheon ruling, which furthered the existence of money in politics, all this different stuff. He has gone after the elite in this country for screwing over regular people, and the elites hate him for it, and he welcomes their hatred. He is definitely hated much more than Elizabeth Warren is. I'll get into a segment about that later on today's show, but he's definitely hated a hell of a lot more. The only difference is that people don't think he can become president. So they've got another thing coming if they're not expecting him to win this primary. They mostly think it's either going to be Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden. So, but yeah, Bernie Sanders has always been on top of this stuff. He's always nailed all the corrupt, millionaires and billionaires that are screwing over regular people while everybody else fucking suffers. And people can't question his commitment to this because he's clear. He is clear that he has been on top of it, and he's going to continue to be on top of it if and when he becomes president. And the people that smear him, they only smear him for the fact that he is angry and he's upset. He's upset and he yells a lot. If you are not as angry as Bernie Sanders is, as somebody like I am, doing this show and talk about these issues, if you're not getting angry about the way people are treated in this country, and you are one of those kind of people, you don't truly understand what is going on in this system, in this political system, and how much the Democratic Party and the Republican Party together are screwing you over, And if you don't realize that, you're just a hopeless sycophant that just loves your party. So Republican Party, Democratic Party, whatever. You're part of that corrupt two-party system. You can't get out of it. You're either team blue or team red, team Democrat or team Republican, team whatever, liberal, team conservative, and that's all you care about. You just care about playing for a team and cheering for a team like it's a fucking football game. And if you could, you would go and get a jersey, a blue jersey and then a red jersey, and just fight against each other. Cheer against each other or cheer for your team against the other team. That's what you would do, because that's people that are not up to par or up to date on the policies that truly exist in this country, and the policies that are screwing over people in this country, and the fact that politicians that they claim to support are pushing these policies. The fact that exists and that's happening. That should anger you to no end. That should get under your skin. That should piss you off. That should make you want to yell and scream like crazy, because obviously nobody's listening. If we're gonna say everything in a low voice, like, oh, we have to be really nice, and we have to speak very nicely to everybody. We have to be polite, and we can't yell and scream too much because we don't want to offend anybody. That's not how it works. That's not how I operate. That's not how other progressives operate. We're mad as hell, and we're not going to take it anymore. We're the same, we're the same as any other person out there that is homeless, living on the street, living paycheck to paycheck. Those people don't have a voice. I have a voice. I'm on camera. I post these, videos on YouTube. I post the audio on Podbean. I broadcast on Facebook Live and Periscope. I have this. I'm lucky to have this at the moment, very small outlet, but I'm trying to use it as best as possible to speak on behalf of the progressive movement and behalf of the people that are suffering. And if people want to be mad at me for being angry, then be mad at me. But you're obviously mad about the wrong thing. You don't care about. You're not focused on the right priorities, and you're not mad. You're not mad enough. You're not even close to mad enough, because you truly don't understand what people are going through in this country, and you're out of touch, or you're just rich as hell, so you're well off, you're doing perfectly fine. You don't care what anybody else is going through. You don't care about what your fellow man and woman is going through, and child too. You don't care if people are if people are living on the streets with their children are starving, they're starving, living on the street, homeless, living in homeless shelters, whatever it is, These people deserve to have jobs. They deserve to be given an opportunity to make a decent living, to live in a decent house, to all that stuff, to to live. I'm not. Nobody's saying go give give each one of these people $1 million so they can, live a wonderful life. Like Donald Trump once bragged about getting a small $1 million loan from his daddy. No, nobody is talking about living like Donald Trump or getting the benefits of Donald Trump. All we're talking about, all progressives talk about, is regular people out there getting a fair shot. That's all it is. And Bernie Sanders is the only candidate that is doing that. And for the Washington Post to pretend as if Elizabeth Warren is on the at the forefront of this. Of these issues and of this issue of helping regular people, and Bernie Sanders is following her, that's complete bullshit. Do not believe that. Do not fall for that. That is a complete and utter lie, and it's a myth. And the media wants to keep trying to undercut Bernie Sanders, keep trying to pretend as if he's the one who's following everybody, when everybody is riding his coattails, pretending that they support Medicare for all, claiming they support Medicare for all when they don't, trying to call their policies Medicare for all when they're not, pushing for healthcare, lame healthcare reform ideas that aren't even remotely close to what he wants to do, and thinking that it's going to solve our problems. No. What Bernie Sanders is pushing for, whether it's regarding Medicare for all, whether it's student loan debt, ending the wars, taking money out of politics, not relying on corporate donors, Bernie Sanders is the only one doing that. Nobody else is doing that. And that is the reality, and that is the truth. So if you think that Elizabeth Warren is better because she uses fancy, nice slogans and flowery rhetoric, just like Hillary Clinton, you're going to be in for a big surprise, if she becomes president and ends up not doing any of those things. Because it's going to be the same thing as Barack Obama did, where he talked about the hope and change, and he ended up giving loose change and no hope, essentially. And then leaving the presidency rich and famous, and, all the, pro-Obama sycophants loving him, while the rest of the country is still living in a shithole, in different parts of the country suffering, whether they're suffering lack of clean water like they are in Flint, Michigan, or they're, living on the streets in Los Angeles and San Francisco and New York, big cities, dying from gun violence in all these big cities, whether it's Chicago, whether it's, New York, all this stuff. People don't do, Los Angeles, people don't do anything to fix these problems. These politicians that claim to care so much about fixing this country, they don't truly want to fix these problems. They just say they want to. Bernie Sanders is the person that's going to be fixing this problem. And if you don't believe that, then you are living in another world, and you're stuck listening to MSNBC and CNN all day, along with your friends on the right wing listening to Fox News. You're just stuck in that mainstream media bubble, and you're not coming out into the real world where everybody is actually wanting to solve real solutions, along with Bernie Sanders and other progressives in the progressive and leftist community. So this next segment is something I was just chomping at the bit to get to. And the video you are about to hear is one of the most absurd things I have ever... Well, to be fair, it's not like I haven't heard it before, but I thought we were past it, and clearly we're not. But again, I don't know why I get so surprised, but again, it's one of the most absurd things I've ever heard, and it's just another pathetic smear against Bernie Sanders. But you won't be surprised to hear this, because it's honestly something that we've come to expect among the progressive community, among the progressive Bernie supporters and people that are out there fighting for real issues, as I've been talking about on several segments today. But check out this segment from MSNBC. This was one of their morning shows, and this woman, her name is, I think it's Emily T. Sussman or something. And So this woman appeared on MSNBC, and she made some ridiculous remarks about Bernie Sanders. And then let's just check this out, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Emily, one of the things that's also striking to me about this most recent poll out of Iowa, Bernie Sanders, has Bernie Sanders, has he peaked?
It does feel that way. It feels like Warren is pulling together a coalition of people, particularly women, and also people of color who liked Hillary Clinton. I think in all of our talking, like our sort of talking head, we act like there's nobody who actually liked her. There are, in fact, people that liked her. And so she is in many ways pulling a lot of that support, but also pulling a lot from Sanders. And Sanders is still in the race. What we're seeing of his supporters is there's a ceiling. There is nowhere to go, but there is no up to go. And all of those support, I actually overheard someone saying that I thought was an interesting point, that basically at this point, if you are still supporting Sanders as opposed to Warren, it's kind of showing your sexism because she has more detailed plans and her plans have evolved. I thought it was an interesting point, and I think there may be something to it.
Yeah, I agree with all that.
It's a good answer, Chris.
Yeah, it is. It keeps me safe. But I'll tell you, the one thing is you can only be an insurgent once. And Sanders is trying to be an insurgent twice. And the whole shtick of yelling a lot and cussing a lot. I mean, O'Rourke's kind of got the cussing lane now. He's still got the angry lane, the angry old grandpa lane. But let's face it, there's only so much time at Thanksgiving you want to spend around that angry relative that keeps yelling at you. And I think that his time may have come.
When has Bernie Sanders ever cursed? I don't even remember the last time Bernie Sanders cursed, but I don't know, that's besides the point. That guy, that other guy that was talking was I think a former Ted Cruz supporter, Marco Rubio supporter, something like that. But I mean, who's surprised by that? What that woman said? What an idiot! She goes out there and says, "Oh well, if you're still supporting Bernie Sanders over Elizabeth Warren, that kind of shows your sexism." And then she puts out this smile like. And then she laughs, and then the host, just like the same segment, the same time that this other woman, Mimi Rocha, she smeared Bernie Sanders and says, "Oh, Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl." The same time, the host didn't say shit. The difference here is the host laughed at her and says, "Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good answer." like this fucking idiot, MSM hosts and pundits. Yucking it up and smearing Bernie Sanders like that, smearing progressives like that is so pathetic. So anyway, to detail or to respond to a couple of the arguments this woman is making. First of all, she says that Bernie Sanders is losing. The support of Hillary, the Hillary voters from 2016 going to Elizabeth Warren. That's not wrong. I do actually believe that is happening because Elizabeth Warren endorsed Hillary Clinton, and a lot of the people that are in the identity politics bandwagon, they're going in favor of Elizabeth Warren because they want a woman, and they would have gone with Kamala Harris. They would have gone with Amy Klobuchar. I'm going to detail that a little bit something similar to that a little bit later. But they're going, they say that kind of stuff. But they would have pretty much supported anybody that was a woman. And just so it happens that Elizabeth Warren is the woman that these people want to invest into, I guess. But this woman says, so the part about Hillary is right, getting the Hillary votes. But then she goes on to say that Elizabeth Warren is attracting the people of color voters that Hillary Clinton got in 2016. And again, the Hillary voters she has, but she's not getting people of color, so African American, Latino. She's not getting those voters. Elizabeth Warren's support among, I believe, just the black community alone is currently 29%. 29%. That means at least 70%, 71%, or maybe at the most 71% of people, because it could be a little bit lower. People maybe are like, I don't know, I do support her or I don't support her. They're kind of undecided, and then the rest just don't support her. But at the most 71% don't support her of the black community. That's the support she has among the black community, 29%. And you're telling me that that Elizabeth Warren is getting support among the black community, and Bernie Sanders is not, and there's no ceiling for Bernie Sanders. He's not going up. He just got 1 million donors. He just got 1 million unique donors. You're telling him he's not going up and there's no ceiling? What the fuck are you talking about? And then obviously the most egregious part. She says, yeah, if you're, if you still support Bernie Sanders and not Elizabeth Warren, that obviously makes you sexist. And then she gives this like annoying smile, like, I'm like, yeah, look. And then she laughs with these two assholes here. Like, this talking point is not going to work. And these people, again, either they're living, again, which they do, but they're either living in their own bubble where they think this stuff resonates and it makes sense, or they're just trolling us and they're just trying to get us pissed off. And they're just trying to say, things to rile up supporters of Bernie Sanders. It's possible it could be both. I don't know. But there's no fucking way this person is saying this and it's resonating with majority of Americans. It's resonating with a bunch of the Hillary diehards from 2016 and a bunch of the people that just are obsessed with identity politics and getting a woman as president. That's it. Those are the only people that this resonates with, and people like this are like, oh yeah, totally. Nobody else agrees with this shit. And this was the reality of this. The reality of this couldn't have been more obvious. So there was a Common Dreams. So Common Dreams is a great publication, progressive publication, and they wrote an article titled "MSNBC Pundit Who Accused Those Who Prefer Sanders to Warren of Sexism Sparks Viral Outcry from #WomenForBernie." So the Bernie supporters, as usual, responded in a wonderful way, just like they did with the Mimi Rocha, incident where she said Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl and he doesn't support, women or whatever. And so similar to that, there was a big outcry that came out where people, they got rightfully pissed off and they said, yeah, what the fuck is this about? How dare you say that? So there was a bunch of tweets sent out, and then further, well, I'll let you know what the hashtag Women for Bernie was about. But so, for example, one of the first tweets that they highlight, or the first tweet that they highlight in this Common Dreams article is from one of Bernie Sanders' biggest supporter, who is a woman and is a woman of color, Nina Turner. And she says, "I'm truly trying to wrap my mind around this foolishness," referring to that specific part where Emily Sussman says that, if you still support Bernie Sanders over Elizabeth Warren, that's kind of showing your sexism. So she says, I'm truly trying to wrap my mind around this foolishness. And then Brianna Joy Gray, which is at Bree Joy. She's the press secretary for Bernie Sanders. She says, "I don't know who needs to hear this, but sexism and racism are too real and too important to be weaponized for political gain." Amen. And then the next one is from Ailey Valila, which is, I believe she ran, hold on one second. She's the Nevada co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign. And I believe, she ran in Nevada against somebody. I think she ran for Nevada Congress, a member of Congress for Nevada. She ran for that seat, and then I think she ended up losing in 2018, I believe. But she's still an advocate for Bernie. She says, "Not here to be vote shamed by the 1%. I am supporting the only candidate who will always put the needs of people first. Hashtag Medicare for all, hashtag Green New Deal, hashtag cancel student loan debt, hashtag housing for all." The list goes on, and he literally writes the damn bills. Hashtag Bernie 2020. So Emily T. Sussman, just so you guys know, is not only a super rich person, her daddy is a super rich person, but she, surprise, surprise, used to be the VP of the Center for American Progress, which is the same organization that is owned, or not owned, but run by a bunch of former Clinton operatives, including Neera Tanden. John Podesta founded it, but Neera Tanden runs it and everything. Neera Tanden is a huge anti-Bernie advocate or whatever. So this person having this opinion about Bernie Sanders is not surprising at all. And, she's, like I said, she's super rich. Her daddy is super rich. He's some sort of like Democratic donor himself. And then, she's, I don't know, he owns some yachts and he owns like mansions and shit all over the place. And then she's, obviously, I mean, she's comes from that elitist type class because her daddy is part of that same kind of, group, part of that same cocktail circuit, essentially. So obviously her elitism is showing here. And so in response to this, like I said before, in response to this, there was a Women for Bernie hashtag that was started. So Nina Turner, once again, comes out and says calling, and then in parenthesis tweeting, hashtag Women for Bernie, where you at? Share your stories of why you support at Bernie Sanders, hashtag Bernie 2020, hashtag Saturday Thoughts. And then the first person says, I'm a 66-year-old woman with a cardiac condition. Rent alone is equal to my Social Security check, living off my savings and terrified that even with Medicare, a medical emergency will bankrupt me. I see plenty of others who are even worse off than me. Hashtag Women for Bernie, hashtag Bernie 2020. And these are all in response to Nina Turner's tweet. Let's see. It says, I'm a woman for Bernie. Hashtag, I'm a hashtag Women for Bernie because I believe in fighting for Medicare for all, education for all, a Green New Deal, and a living wage. We have enough politicians. I can't wait for an activist, leader, and public servant to be our president. Hashtag, and then they added Nina Turner, they added Bernie Sanders, and then hashtag Bernie 2020. And then the final one is look at all the Bernie Sanders sexist supporters, hashtag Women for Bernie, hashtag Feminists for Bernie. And then it shows a picture of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, at least 15 or 16, 17 young women of all different skin colors, hair colors, all different ethnicities supporting Bernie Sanders, all different ages. So all the people that claim Bernie Sanders' movement is just full of Bernie bros, you are completely misinformed, and you just, again, like I said before, you just hate Bernie Sanders because he happens to be a white man that has an ideology that is not only progressive, but that he also has supporters that are fully backing him and are willing to go to bat for him as much as possible. You can't stand that about the Bernie Sanders movement. You are jealous of the Bernie Sanders movement. You are jealous of the fact that he has feminist supporters and female supporters. Remember, notoriously, Gloria Steinem went on I believe it was Bill Maher's show, and said, and this is back in, I think, 2015, so even before the 2016 primary. In 2015, she went on Bill Maher's show and said the only supporters that are women, the only reason that that the women support Bernie, or like young women support Bernie Sanders, is because they're trying to look for young men to fuck. She literally said that. They're looking for young men to like get with and to hook up with. That was the mentality of Gloria Steinem, who's not only a feminist, but actually, I believe it was her group or something that said, it was back in the 90s, I think, that said, it was like late 90s, where they inducted Bernie Sanders into like the woman for life or something, or he's a feminist for life, or a woman for life, honorary woman or something, some shit like that. And Gloria Steinem goes out and says, yeah, all the women that support Bernie Sanders, they just want to fuck men. That's the only reason that they support Bernie. So listen, man, people that are like this, you just can't reason with them because there's something wrong in their head. There's something wrong going on in their heads, and they clearly can't think straight because they're too stuck on, hating Bernie Sanders for all the wrong reasons, and they're too stuck on trying to find ways to essentially, like, they want to marginalize the female support that Bernie Sanders has. And Bernie Sanders, by the way, Bernie Sanders, as many of you know, Bernie Sanders is a big supporter of the feminist movement. He is a big supporter of women's rights. He is a big supporter of Planned Parenthood. He is a big supporter of being pro-choice, allowing, being in support of abortion, not letting the government control, which is ironic from all these right-wingers who hate the government, not letting the government control women's bodies and telling them what to do. Bernie Sanders is in support of the feminist movement. He is in support of women, and the women that support him know this, and they also support him for the fact that he's pushing for policies that are overwhelmingly going to support women. So they're going to support the policies like Medicare for All, which will support women. They support canceling student loan debt and just in general free college for everybody. Overwhelmingly helps women. They support housing for all. Overwhelmingly supports women, especially women of color, who especially if they're single moms and they want to live in a house instead of living on the streets. Bernie Sanders wants to have housing for all. So Bernie Sanders he's a proponent of the feminist movement. He is a proponent of women. He is a proponent of great policies that all people can support, not just women, not just men, not just LGBTQ people, not just Latinos. Everybody supports these policies. It's a universal policy that people in other countries would be like, yeah, of course people should support. You ask anybody in Scandinavia, you ask anybody in Europe, you ask anybody in Denmark, Sweden, Iceland, Poland, all these different countries, people are like, yeah, that totally makes sense. Why shouldn't anybody support giving universal health care? Why shouldn't anybody support free college? Why shouldn't anybody support housing and a jobs guarantee? That's another thing that Bernie's supporting and pushing for. Ending the wars, not being involved in endless wars. This is totally it's stuff that to everybody's just like, yeah, it's duh. Like, obviously you should support it. So these idiots out there that just hate Bernie Sanders and, this idiot person, elitist woman, this bougie white elitist woman talking about how Bernie Sanders supporters are sexist if they don't, fall in line and support, Elizabeth Warren, which is the same exact thing they said about Hillary Clinton, by the way, are completely delusional and out of their minds. And by the way, these are the same kind of people that attack those of us who, and I'm one of them, those of us who voted for Jill Stein, and those of us who supported Susan Sarandon when she said that, and people can disagree with it, but she said that electing Donald Trump will bring on the revolution because it's going to wake people up and make them realize that, yeah, we have serious fucking problems in this country, and people are going to realize what the problems are. Whereas if you were to elect Hillary Clinton, you wouldn't realize the problems. You would think everything is, unicorns and rainbows, and life is wonderful. And as the idiot Hillary supporters say, oh, we'd just be at brunch right now if Hillary Clinton was president. Get the fuck out of here, man. So my point is, when the people that supported Susan Sarandon, the people that supported Jill Stein, we supported women. We're supporting women. I voted for Jill Stein. I supported Susan Sarandon when she said that. So I'm supporting a woman. So how am I sexist if I'm supporting women in either what they say or the policies that they push for, as Jill Stein did? And Susan Sarandon was also supportive of Jill Stein, too. I'm supporting what these women are saying. I'm supporting the policies that these women are pushing, but yet I'm a sexist? So how does that make any fucking sense? Because I don't want to support Elizabeth Warren, who was a Republican until she was like 50 years old, because she's a white woman, because she's a former corporate lawyer, because she went to Harvard University, she's Ivy League educated. So because I don't support that, somehow I'm a sexist? I don't care if she's a woman. I don't support any Ivy League educated politicians. I don't like that. That's why Bernie Sanders, I like him, because he's not Ivy League educated. He's not an elitist scumbag who's rich as fuck, and he's got $1 million. Oh, great, wonderful, $1 million. You'd be lucky to find anybody being as having $1 million. I'm sorry, or at least being in the range of just having $1 million like Bernie Sanders does. Well, because all the other members of Congress and senators and politicians out there, they're rich as fuck. Like I said before, Barack Obama's rich as hell. He wasn't obviously even close to as rich before he became president. Once Obama became president, and he finished his presidency, he's a fucking multimillionaire. So all these politicians that are in Washington and are benefiting from the corrupt system, as Obama did, as Hillary Clinton did, as Donald Trump is doing right now at this moment, these people are all rich as fuck. They don't give a shit about regular people. They pretend to, but they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit about what regular people are going through. They just want to use the people that are suffering as a political shield to show, oh, look how much I care. Look how much I care, because they support me, because they're stupid enough to support me, when in reality they're not doing shit for those people to help them when they need them the most. So recently I came across a video on YouTube from Emma Vigeland. She is a reporter for TYT Network. I think her YouTube page is called TYT, like Rebel Headquarters or something. So she goes all over the country and does interviews with like Trump supporters, and she's done interviews with I'm going to be showing you in a second, Elizabeth Warren supporters, I think Bernie supporters. So she's talked to all different kinds of people all over the country. At one point, she was pretty much considered as one of the better progressive, leftist reporters out there, and supporters of like leftist, type politicians. And she still claims to be. But there's been a little bit of doubt risen, a little bit of doubt rising about whether she truly is a supporter of truly leftist progressive candidates. But we're going to get to that in a second. So these are a couple. So I'm going to play you a couple of videos here. A couple of videos where she spoke to Elizabeth Warren supporters and why they support Elizabeth Warren and why they don't support Bernie Sanders. So that's specifically what this next one is focusing on. This first video. So I'm going to play the first video for you guys, and then we're going to discuss it on the other side, and then we'll play another video for you guys after that. So let's play this first video first, and then I'll analyze it after this. So just take a look at this one, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Senator Elizabeth Warren has filled out this Washington Square Park rally here in New York City. There's so many people here. Her popularity just keeps growing and growing. So I wanted to ask her supporters, why her? Why not Bernie Sanders? If it's really just on policy, those two are closest. So why support her over the further left, more democratic socialist version in Bernie?
I think Bernie's message kind of resonated with everyone at first, and she can kind of carry the torch farther than he can with others different demographics and supporters and things like that. So I think she has a more of electability factor than Bernie does this time around.
I got into Elizabeth Warren a long time ago. If you remember in 2008, the housing crisis in California, we lost our home, including everybody on my row in Sacramento, California, along with rows and rows of homes. And I couldn't understand it. I was still in high school, so I didn't understand why we lost our home, but they just said, the recession, right? So as I got older, I got some researching, and I saw her and how she's been fighting and screaming at the top of her lungs about why we're going to a recession, how this can bankrupt American families, and at the end of the day, what we can do about it. So then she ran for Senate, and then she's been out there being the voice of what I really have been going through. So I believe in her in my heart and soul. I understand the Bernie supporters, I get them. But Elizabeth is my heart and soul because I feel like she's really speaking to what I've been through. And I'm still a capitalist. I still believe in markets, but I believe in rules and regulations. Like everything she believes in, I really do believe in.
I like Senator Warren because she has, her slogan is, I have a plan for everything, but also she talks about getting rid of the filibuster, which I think is very important because nothing will be passed if you don't get rid of the filibuster because we'll never have enough votes in the Senate to get anything passed. And I just think she's so smart and she's awesome. I just love her.
I like Bernie too. I think a great ticket would be her and Bernie, but that's too much to ask.
Bernie, why are you here at this Elizabeth Warren rally?
I don't know.
All right, should be campaigning. Get back to it.
She's not my candidate yet, 100%. I like Pete Buttigieg, but I like her. I like that she has a plan.
All right. So it's between her and Pete Buttigieg.
Oh yeah, but also maybe even Amy Klobuchar and Cory Booker. I'm not even close to picking one person yet. But if I'm gonna go for somebody like on the left side of the spectrum, it's going to be Elizabeth Warren as opposed to any of the others like Bernie or anybody like that.
So why not Bernie?
It's time for a woman is all. I mean, Bernie's over and done. Didn't do it the last time. Elizabeth has more energy. I think she's got more intelligence. So
I think more people can relate to her. And I like that she's a woman, and she's very smart. She's very sharp. I mean, I'm not sure any of them are quite as smart as she is.
Bernie's a great guy. He's fought really hard
but I just don't think that people are going to elect someone of that age, unfortunately. And it would be great to see a woman president. I think that this country elected Barack Obama, the first African American president. We can't elect the first woman. I think that's where this country needs to go.
So, I mean, honestly, I'm just like cringing and like laughing along as I'm listening to that. So let's go through it here. So the first person says that Elizabeth Warren can carry the torch farther than he can, and with other demographics, and has more electability than Bernie does. So what is that based on? I have no idea. I don't even. Listen, when these people say, when they say this whole like the electability type stuff, it's a made up word. That's a made up word by the mainstream media. It's something that they just like to throw out there as like a buzzword, like electability. You know, are you electable? Are you electable? Like they just put that out there to get people to decide that some are, you know, to come up with some arbitrary reason as to how somebody is electable when it's pretty much based on nothing. So, did you see a single person? I mean, other than like maybe the second person, I'll get to them in a second, but the second person mentioning that like the housing crisis and what they went through in California and stuff, other than that, I didn't hear a single policy position that these people pointed out. So the second person says, "Oh, I'm a capitalist, and she's in my heart and soul. In my heart and soul, I love Hillary Clinton. She buries in my heart and soul, and she does so much for you." Like it's this emotional attachment to Elizabeth Warren that this specific person has, and it seems like a lot of these people have. And I mean, listen, the whole idea of like the housing crisis and, you know, you lost your house, and he said he was young, high school, that's perfectly legitimate. I totally get that. Why you think Bernie Sanders can't fix that problem? I mean, he says he's a capitalist, he believes in markets. That's the same thing Elizabeth Warren says. So, okay, fine. If that, I mean, at least you're honest and saying, okay, this is why I support Elizabeth Warren, because I believe in markets, I'm a capitalist. Okay, that's, I mean, I don't agree with that, but that's at least you're saying, and you're not saying like, oh, well, she's better than Bernie, but I don't know why. You know, that's basically what a lot of people say, or that she's a woman or whatever. At least in this case, this is a legitimate reason. So, well, yeah. So with the first person, they just said, oh, she can carry the torch further than him, and he didn't even give a policy reason. That guy didn't make any sense. The second guy, okay, I'll give him credit because he says that he's a capitalist. And, you know, he believes in market and stuff, and, you know, the housing crisis stuff. I mean, Bernie Sanders, it's not like Bernie Sanders wasn't addressing the housing crisis. And what did Elizabeth Warren do to talk about the housing crisis? I mean, maybe she spoke about it. Did she put out any policies regarding? Did she put out any legislation about it? Did Bernie? I'm thinking Bernie did it. If you're talking about the housing crisis 10 years ago, in 2008, Bernie Sanders was in the Senate. Elizabeth Warren was not in the Senate. So if you're talking about that, I think it was 2007, 2008, and because the housing crisis led to the recession, the 2008 recession. So if you're talking about that, it's about 10, 11 years ago, 12 years ago. So Bernie Sanders was in the Senate. He was actually fresh in the Senate. So Elizabeth Warren was not anywhere. She hadn't even created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau yet. So I don't know what he's talking about, but okay, I get his position being a capitalist and you know, liking markets and stuff, but the whole emotional, like, oh, I believe her in my heart and stuff, that was ridiculous. And then it gets worse. The third person says she likes Elizabeth Warren because she wants to get rid of the filibuster, and nothing will get passed with it still around, and she's just wonderfully smart, and she's great, and I'm so in love with her, blah, blah. Okay. So the whole idea of wanting to get rid of the filibuster, it's a double-edged sword. If you get rid of that filibuster, what's going to happen when a Republican comes into, you know? So I'm sorry. So not only the Republican becomes president, but the Republicans take the Senate. What's going to happen? They're going to end up being able to do everything with 51 votes. You want to go into war somewhere? Well, we're already going to wars everywhere. But I mean, I don't know. You want to go into more wars? You want to do more, you know, terrible things? You want to push more tax cuts, pass more tax cuts? Yeah, you don't have to go through a filibuster. So when it comes to the idea of the filibuster, I get the argument, But you have to understand that that's not going to solve all our problems. If anything, it makes the problems worse. Obviously there's going to be another Republican in office. There's going to be another Trump-like figure, possibly, I'm guessing, in office at some point, and that person's going to want to push tax cuts. You don't even have to be a Trump-like figure. Just be a standard Republican. They're going to push for tax cuts just like the Bush tax cuts were passed, which, by the way, were extended and made permanent by Barack Obama. But that's a story for another day. But when it comes to this, when it comes to the whole idea of the filibuster, you're not, like, you're putting a Band-Aid over a gangrenous wound. You're not fixing all the problems by getting rid of the filibuster. So this person is just kind of listening to, the Democratic Party talking points and watching too much MSNBC, and thinks, doing this one thing is going to fix the problem. And because Elizabeth Warren has talked about it, that must mean it's a wonderful idea. And then when she's president, it's not like she can get rid of the filibuster. So just because she's talking about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. Just like any other issue. So that's something that has to be decided by the Senate it has to be decided by Senate. So yeah, that's a whole different thing. So the fourth person is probably the worst one. She says Warren isn't her candidate yet, but likes Pete Buttigieg. And she also said Cory Booker and Amy Klobuchar, but she likes that Warren, quote, has a plan. Wow, yeah. Mention one of those plans for me, please. Ma'am, please mention one plan that you support that Elizabeth Warren supposedly has. And then the worst part, she says it's time for a woman. Oh my God, making the same fucking mistake in 2016. We already went through this in 2016. And then she says Bernie is over and done. Didn't do it last time. Elizabeth has more energy and has more intelligence. The same fucking people that say Bernie Sanders yells too much. Bernie Sanders is too angry. Bernie Sanders his supporters are too passionate, or not passionate. They say they're too. They also say his supporters are too angry, but whatever. They're saying all these things about these Bernie supporters, like having too much energy and being too angry and being too upset, and then somehow Elizabeth Warren has more energy. I don't even get what that means. Even with Bernie Sanders' heart attack issue, he's going to still have as much, if not more, energy than Elizabeth Warren. That's complete bullshit. This person is the worst out of all of them for sure. And then the next person is pretty bad too. They say. The fifth person says more people can relate to Warren and likes that she's a woman. She's very smart and very sharp. Jesus Christ. So more people can relate to, based on what? I'm telling you, man, when these people say these things, they're listening to talking points from MSNBC pundits. These are not things that regular people say. These are not something that people regularly pick up on. Nobody watches Elizabeth Warren and says, yeah, that person can relate to me. That corporate lawyer that went to Harvard, that used to be a Republican, is somehow can relate to me. And this was in New York. This was in Washington Park in New York. She's from Oklahoma. Elizabeth Warren is originally from Oklahoma. Former Republican, corporate lawyer, went to Harvard. Somehow that person can relate more than the activist who went to Chicago University. It was a socialist. His honeymoon, he went for his honeymoon to Russia. He went to the Soviet Union for his honeymoon with Bernie and Jane Sanders. They went for their honeymoon to the Soviet Union because they were going and talking about different issues regarding like the Cold War and kind of creating peace, between the United States and America, and then United States and Russia, and then figuring out how the situations were in Russia regarding, because it was obviously run by communist Russia back then, and how the school programs and different Medicare healthcare and school programs and whatever, but poverty was very low there because of the kind of the communist regime that it controlled there. Obviously that doesn't mean that Bernie Sanders supported everything that they were doing, but they were going there and they were examining how the communist rule was back then. And he went there. He wasn't going on honeymoons to the fucking Bahamas or the Cayman Islands or whatever they go, wherever people go, Hawaii or some shit. He was going and trying to go, trying to do something useful for his own knowledge and for his, so he can maybe possibly even inform other people. And obviously, Bernie is also a guy that he marched with MLK. Bernie Sanders marched with MLK, Martin Luther King Jr. during the Civil Rights Movement. You can't relate to that guy? There wasn't one, other than one black dude. There wasn't any other people of color in that video. And do they know about Bernie Sanders, that Bernie Sanders marched with the MLK? If they do, they would probably be like, who cares? It doesn't matter. I don't give a shit. Because, I don't know, because he's white. And he's a man. And whatever. He's a socialist or what. I don't know, who knows? People bring up random shit when they smear Bernie. But Bernie Sanders has done a hell of a lot more things than Elizabeth Warren that relates to regular people. Other than the fact that Bernie Sanders has been in Washington since 1990, but he's still just as regular as anybody else is because he's going and meeting with regular people on a daily basis, and he's been in contact with regular people on a daily basis. Like I said, he's marched with the MLK. He went... he spends his honeymoons going to different countries just to educate himself more about how their countries are run. He goes with his wife of all people, which is even more surprising. Not a lot of people will do that. So Bernie Sanders is the most relatable candidate running for president right now, and he's the most relatable politician in the country. That is undoubtable. You cannot say that Elizabeth Warren can relate to people more. That's just based on nothing. Again, that person is repeating something that she heard on MSNBC, and she's just putting something out there that she heard, and it just makes sense to her. She's very smart and very sharp. Oh my God! We need a fucking genius out there. We need a Harvard law graduate. Yeah, that really worked out for us when Obama became president. He was such a wonderful president when he was, when he invaded 5 extra countries on top of the Afghanistan war and the Iraq war that we were in. He ended up invading 5 more countries, 7 wars. He dropped 26,000 bombs in 1 year. In 2016, I believe it was. Barack Obama dropped 26,000 bombs. He used the drone program where he used drone strikes on innocent Middle East innocent people in the Middle East. 97% of the time, Barack Obama's drone strikes were killing the wrong people. They were not killing terrorists. They were killing innocent people. I mean, how is that person? And those are all things that Elizabeth Warren has not spoken out against. She's spoken a little bit about the military-industrial complex and how they're kind of screwing over the regular people, or screwing over basically the country, and then obviously in extension the regular people by having all this money invested into endless wars. But she doesn't really get into the details of it, and she hasn't. Her foreign policy record is horrible. So my point is that when you have somebody out there that's very sharp and very smart, like a Barack Obama type, which Elizabeth Warren basically is, it doesn't mean you're automatically going to just fix all the problems just because you're smart and sharp. That's not how you get things done. You need to go out there and be strong and be standing up for positions that you've been pushing for years, which Bernie Sanders has done. And then the 6th person in the video says they don't think people will elect someone Bernie Sanders' age, and they would like to have a woman president just like they elected the first black president in Barack Obama. So again, as usual, back to the identity politics. We have to get a woman in there because the last president was a black man. So let's get a black woman or a white woman, whatever. We need to take that next step of progress by putting a woman in there, because that's going to solve all our problems. Laugh along with me. So just typical, idiots that honestly, it just makes me cringe listening to them. So we have another video now. So the next video is, like I said, that first video was from Warren supporters in New York City, Washington Park. It was an anti-corruption rally. And this next video is in Miami, Florida, also speaking with Elizabeth Warren supporters. So check this out, and then we'll talk about this on the other side.
Part 1 is attack the corruption head on. Part 2 is let's restructure, make a couple of structural changes in this economy. And part 3, let's protect our democracy.
I'm here at the Elizabeth Warren rally in Miami the day before she's set to take the stage in the first Democratic debate. What's interesting to me is that Elizabeth Warren seems to have the support of many establishment-minded voters. Third Way said they'd be okay with her, although I think that's the minority, and also progressive-minded voters. So she's bringing these two groups together. Why is that? And if Elizabeth Warren isn't the nominee, who would these Warren supporters back instead? Is Elizabeth Warren your number 1 candidate, would you say?
I would say she's in my top 2.
Who's the other one? Can I guess? Is it Bernie Sanders?
No, not Bernie. Kamala Harris is my number 2. Is between her and Elizabeth Warren.
My alternative would probably be Kamala Harris. I kind of want to learn more about the other candidates. She's my second, and then I would say I want to learn more about Yang.
So by my estimation, Elizabeth Warren is the second most progressive candidate in the race after Bernie Sanders. So I was curious to find that a lot of the supporters here aren't considering Bernie Sanders as their second or third choice candidate, and in fact don't like him at all in some instances.
The 2016 election was so divisive and tore apart the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, and that is part of the reason that we have Trump in the White House. And I just think that it's really time. I mean, it's just not the right time. We've got to get rid of Trump in power, and I don't believe that having Bernie in the mix is a good thing for the party.
I'm a supporter of Elizabeth Warren. I'm actively donating to her and to Bernie Sanders. I think those are the only two candidates right now that are representing quality values in Americans, the young people, against corruption, standing up against corruption, the big corporations that are polluting the environment and just running over all our industries, exporting our workers overseas, and just keeping all the profits for themselves.
I don't understand where the discrepancy comes in. I mean, it could be that Warren is a registered Democrat or Warren is a woman. I don't know. I don't think people, when they say that they don't like Bernie Sanders but they like Elizabeth Warren, I don't think there's a lot of substance to that. I think maybe they are unaware of how close on the issues they actually are.
A lot of people would say that Bernie Sanders is closest to Elizabeth Warren on policy. He's not in your top three considerations?
Just from what happened in like the previous, presidential run, I was for him for a while, but I feel that his values are a little too extreme for me.
If Bernie's looking like he's going to lose to Biden, then I'll definitely have to switch support to Bernie.
Can you explain why it's between Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, so I think it comes back to the similar reasons why I was a big Hillary supporter. I was raised by a single mom, and I guess through the eyes of my mom, I kind of understood the unfair struggles that women have to go through, especially in a world dominated by men.
It's about opportunity. It's about who we are as a country. Because here's how I see this. My daddy, he ended up as a janitor. But his baby daughter, she got the opportunity.
When she makes the case for really progressive positions, she can do them in an emotionally compelling way. So it's not just, I have a 5-point plan for universal child care. It's, here's my story of how I almost had to opt out of the job market because I couldn't handle the struggles of having 2 kids as a single mom while having a job.
So again, I mean, usual supporters that just don't seem to be they don't seem to be the progressives that they claim to be. These are just people that are still stuck in they're still stuck in 2016. They're still kind of the same kind of Hillary, sound like the same kind of Hillary type diehards. So the first person said they had Warren as their number 1 choice and Kamala as their number 2 choice, which is kind of surprising in a way, but okay. And it's and they said they support them because it comes back to why they backed Hillary Clinton, due to the fact that they were raised by a single mom, and through the eyes of their mom, they realized the quote unfair struggles that women have to go through in a world dominated by men. So, listen, when it comes to the idea that like you have this view because of your mom, I get it. I understand that being a single mom it's tough. Nobody's denying that. But to vote for a presidential candidate based on that is just strange. It just doesn't make a sense to me. And yeah, obviously the world is dominated by men. Ultimately, it comes down to the policies. What are the policies? So, like I said earlier on the show, Bernie Sanders is a feminist. He supports women's rights. He's pro-choice. He supports a woman if she wants to have an abortion. He supports her right to use contraceptives and whatever. He supports all of these things. So, yeah, he's a man, but at least he supports a woman's rights to do something. And whether, I love my mom. If my mom, whether or not she was a single mom, that wouldn't change my view on why, on who I vote for president. That just makes no sense to me. But listen, I'm trying to analyze somebody that I don't know them. I don't know what they've gone through in their life other than what they just explained. But to me, it just doesn't make any sense. And I don't think that's a legitimate reason to not vote for a more progressive candidate. Now, all these people that spoke here, they don't seem to say that Bernie Sanders is more progressive. By the way, the fact that they say Kamala Harris is their number 2 just makes no sense. I mean, again, there's no policy. You're just saying that I support this person because they're a woman. It just comes down to identity politics again. Everything with these kind of people is just identity politics, just identity, woman, woman of color. I don't know, men are dominating the world. Okay, but how about the policies though? So anyway, the second person says they have Warren as their number 1 and Kamala as their number 2, just like the last person. But they say they want to learn more about the other candidates and possibly might go for Yang or want to learn more about Yang, at least Andrew Yang. They said they don't have Bernie as one of their top choices because of what happened in 2016 in the primary, and that after being for him, they realized his values are, quote, a little too extreme. Again, what are the issues? I honestly, I don't know. Maybe Emma Vigeland, she edited those parts out, but I would like to hear the policies that these people this person believes is truly, a little too extreme. What is too extreme? Getting Medicare for all for people that don't even have decent health, even remotely decent health care. Getting free college for people that have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars, for college and to be put into student loan debt. People that, wanting to get rid of, cancel student loan debt, cancel medical debt, wanting to get, people a $15 minimum wage. Obviously, that person is living their life very, very comfortably if they think that Bernie Sanders is a little too extreme. And these are young people. The first video I played for you guys, I don't know if it was all, those are kind of a mix of younger and older people. These were all young people. You guys can check out the video. I'm only posting the audio, and then it's a screenshot of the Rebel headquarters logo. But if you guys want to check out the video, you can see all those people are young people at this rally, and it was in Miami, Florida. And these were all young people, and one of these young people saying that Bernie's policies are too extreme. It makes no sense. And a lot of these people say, "Oh, I was for him in 2016." I don't know if I believe that. A lot of Bernie supporters have been on Twitter, have been calling out people that say, "Oh yeah, I was for Bernie." Then all of a sudden, I realized that he's too angry, and I can't support him anymore. So yeah, I don't know how true that is, but whatever. And then it says the third person says that the 2016 primary was, quote, so divisive and tore apart the Democratic Party, and that's why we have Trump, and they don't believe having Bernie in the mix is a good thing for the party. I mean, what else can I say to that? It's just ridiculous. It's so absurd, and this seems like another one of those, Hillary Clinton diehards that, is all bent out of shape and triggered by the fact that Bernie Sanders had the audacity to challenge Hillary Clinton in a primary. How could he do that? He needs to just hand over the presidency to Hillary Clinton, and now he needs to hand over the presidency to Elizabeth Warren, even though we haven't had a single primary yet. This is what these people think. Well, at least certainly in regard to Hillary Clinton, they thought she was like on the top of a throne. You have to bow at the altar of the Queen Hillary Clinton and give her exactly what she wants because she's demanding it and because her supporters are demanding it. Not one Bernie Sanders supporter has said that Bernie Sanders should be handed the presidency, let alone the nomination. Nobody has ever said that I have any Bernie Sanders supporters that I've spoken to, and I am in constant communication with Bernie Sanders supporters on Twitter and social media, so I know who they are. I know what they say. Not a single one of them has said that Bernie Sanders it's time for Bernie. Well, they've said it. To be fair, they have said it's time for Bernie Sanders, but they don't say because it's Bernie Sanders. They say because of his policies. They're not in love with Bernie Sanders. Oh, just Bernie Sanders because he's a white Jewish guy, from Brooklyn, New York. No, nobody's ever said that. They've said that They said that his policies are what's going to help this country. That we love his policies and we support him. See, everything is about policy when it comes to Bernie supporters. They don't love, a guy because he's, a 78-year-old guy, Jewish possibly atheist guy from Brooklyn, New York, with bad posture and wears suits from Kohl's, Kohl's department store. That's not the way that's not the way we think. Bernie supporters like him for his policies, period. That's all it really is. And that's what it comes down to. Now, if they, respect Bernie Sanders as a person and think he's a nice guy and stuff, that's fine too. But the policies come first. All that other stuff is secondary or just doesn't exist. I know it doesn't exist for me. I just care about his policies. So, I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters out there. And then the next person, they seem to be a little bit more of the more informed Bernie supporters, Bernie and Warren supporters. They said fourth person, fourth person, they said that they're actively donating to Warren and Bernie because referring to Bernie and Warren, they're actively supporting quality values in Americans. Standing up against corruption, exporting workers overseas, against exporting workers overseas, which means the jobs overseas, so basically trade deals. And then says if Warren ends up losing to Biden, they will support Bernie. So Warren is their first choice, Bernie is their second choice. I can't necessarily be mad at that. I honestly would prefer if this person was the other way around. Honestly, I wouldn't really support them if they said they support Bernie and then Warren, because I don't think you should be honestly supporting Warren on any front, but that's just my opinion. But at least they're I don't know, the bar is kind of low, so at least in this regard, it's like at least they support Bernie, and they don't say the stupid thing that the other people are saying, I support Kamala Harris. But yeah, and what they were saying, they were putting out policies and stuff, which is good. So whereas the other person talking about, the primary last time was so divisive and Bernie Sanders' policies or values are a little bit too extreme. You're not even getting into detail. At least this dude is getting into detail. So you give him credit for that. And the fifth person says they don't understand. So they were a little bit more of the sane Bernie and Warren supporters. They said they don't understand where people see the difference between Bernie and Warren, and the people who say they don't like Bernie but like Warren, that there isn't much substance behind that. So this person is right in the regard that that there is no substance. There's not much substance behind people that say there's that they prefer, they don't like Bernie but like Warren. That's true in a way, because if you like Warren, I don't see why you wouldn't like Bernie. Now, if it's the other way around, if you like Bernie and you don't like Warren, it makes sense, because Warren is less progressive than Bernie is, whereas with Warren, Bernie is more progressive. So it doesn't really make sense when people support Warren. But at least you're understanding that, Bernie isn't less progressive. That would be stupid, because that's not true at all. But when they're saying that, what did they say? They said, so they don't understand where people see differences between Bernie and Warren. There are differences between Bernie and Warren. That's undoubtable. There's no doubt about that. I pointed it out. People on Twitter multiple times that I've spoken to, other hosts, Kyle Klinsky and all that. They've spoken about how Bernie and Warren are not the same. The difference is clear. She supported Donald Trump's. She voted for his military budget. She supported Ben Carson when he was being chosen as the head of HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development. And then she pulled her vote back, or at least said she doesn't support him after a bunch of outcry from progressives. So she just changed her position there. She doesn't support stopping any of the massacre going on in Gaza against Palestinians on behalf of Israel. The weapons deals that we're giving to Israel and allowing them to massacre and commit apartheid against Palestinians. She doesn't oppose that. She does not support Medicare for all. She claims to. I played a video clip on my last episode where she was saying, I totally support Medicare for all, but then she says it's just a framework. What? It's not just a framework. That's not true at all. So I don't know where she's coming up with that stuff. But yeah, that's another thing. And then, she doesn't want to cancel all student loan debt. She only wants to get rid of part of it. It's like, what was it, like 600 billion or 700 billion? 700 million. Bernie wants to get rid of, no, billion, I think it was 600 billion. Bernie wants to get rid of $1.6 trillion worth of student loan debt. So much more than hers. More than half. Yeah, it's more than half. So yeah, and then, I mean, that's just a bunch of things I can think off the top of my head, which are the difference between them two. I'm sure there's much more. I might be blanking a little bit, but the difference between them are very, very clear. And so if people don't see that, they just don't know the policies. And then the final person to be asked a question there was Adam Green, who I believe is an advisor for Elizabeth Warren. I know because he's part of this organization called the PCCC, which is the Progressive Change Campaign Committee, and they ended up endorsing Warren. I believe Adam Green now, who heads that organization, is her advisor, and he says that she makes the case for really progressive positions and does it in an emotionally compelling way. So this is another case of Warren supporters wanting to connect emotionally to the candidate. So again, Elizabeth Warren doesn't have really progressive positions. She just has like moderately decent Democratic Party positions where she puts those positions out there. And like I just said before regarding her record of bad votes and making, being in favor of bad things, whether it's foreign policy or, domestic policy, she is not pushing for really progressive positions. So that's just bullshit. And the fact that, these people specifically, but any voters want their politicians to emotionally compel them, honestly, I find that to be really pathetic. And I think it's sad how people have to be kind of pulled in by emotion, and they can't just like the policies. Why can't you just like the policies? What's wrong with the policies? The policies are not bad. Well, for some politicians, but that's the thing. Maybe Elizabeth Warren knows her policies aren't as good, so her advisors, they're not as progressive. So her advisors tell her, "Yeah, just go be emotional. Just pull, tug at the heartstrings of people." Just like that one person in the first video at the New York rally said that, "Oh yeah, I feel, she touches my heart. She, touches, I feel her in my heart and soul, or whatever." So, yeah, but tugging at the heartstrings of people, it just doesn't help anything. I'm sorry, it's just not a good enough. It's not a good enough way to get people to vote for you. You can't rely on people wanting to go out there and emotionally be in favor of you unless you're pushing, policy positions that they support. And if you only focus on getting them emotionally, that's not going to help, because you're not going to get anywhere policy wise. You're just going to focus on the emotion. You're going to focus on the feelings, and then you don't have to push anything on the policy, and then you don't have to say, "Oh well, I didn't promise any policies." I can go out there and push more wars and push for more deregulation, push for more. Tax cuts, but I never said I was going to promise. I never said I was or wasn't going to promise those things. But so, too bad for you. I got you emotionally, so it's too late now. So, yeah. So I mean, these people, these are not majority of them. To be fair, a couple of them were decent, but majority of them are not very smart, educated people. They don't know the ins and outs of the policies, political positions, and the policies that kind of go into every politician out there, let alone the party, let alone, everything that they believe in. So, it's one of those disappointing things, but at the same time, it's not terribly surprising. It's just what you have to kind of come to accept with these people, and it's really kind of shitty. But so the reporter that was asking these questions was Emma Vigeland, and you would think like, okay, she's just going out there. She does, she's being an objective reporter, asking normal questions, whatever. She doesn't support Bernie Sanders more. She doesn't support Elizabeth Warren more. She just an objective person asking questions, just getting to the truth, getting information for you. So I'm going to play a part of this video. This isn't the entire clip. You guys can check the entire clip for you if you want. But this one little last part of the video is her ranting about how people are being totally unfair, going after Elizabeth Warren for not being progressive enough. So she gets really, really angry about this, and then she has like this like almost a 2-minute rant or so, where she just like rails against people that have the audacity to go after Elizabeth Warren for not being progressive enough. So check out this video, and then we'll respond to it on the other side.
There are legitimate criticisms of Elizabeth Warren. This is not one of them. This is not one of them, and I'm sick of it. And I'm sick of the recycling of criticisms of Hillary Clinton to attack an entirely different candidate in Elizabeth Warren. Because, like, what? They kind of look alike? They look like they could be sisters? I don't understand it. I do not understand it. And we're supposed to be principled on the left. And looking at facts and policy, they are entirely different candidates. Elizabeth Warren is a progressive, even though she does have question marks around certain parts of her record. This is not controversial to say, but I'm sure it will be. I'm sure this video will get downvoted like hell because of this irrational hatred towards the second most progressive candidate in the race. It's trendy online to dislike her. There are a lot of YouTube personalities, a lot of people in the progressive community who have made it very clear that they're going to go after Elizabeth Warren. They've made careers, they've made money out of telling people what they want to hear and jumping on a certain bandwagon. I'm not one of those people. They don't care about facts in many instances, and I'm not going to be one of those people. So, sorry. And Elizabeth Warren does not deserve these kinds of smears. And again, Bernie Sanders has embraced her, not just as a personal friend, but an ideological ally. And that should tell you everything you need to know about how ridiculous this has been.
So I don't care if Bernie Sanders is friends with him, is friends with Elizabeth Warren. I don't care. I don't care if he's embraced her, endorsed, or whatever the fuck he's done. That kind of stuff doesn't matter to me. I care about the policies. So if they're friends and they're BFFs and they're hanging out and they're kicking it and they're chilling, I don't give a shit. That doesn't mean anything to me. I care about what policy positions they stand for. I already pointed out the policy positions that Elizabeth Warren has advocated for, the votes that she's made, the fact that she's waffling on Medicare for all. She's barely ever talks about foreign policy. Her foreign policy record is abysmal, honestly. If you're thinking about it from a progressive point of view, it's terrible. She's essentially like another neocon. And then, talking about how her and Elizabeth Warren and Hillary Clinton are completely different. Elizabeth Warren endorsed Hillary Clinton. Elizabeth Warren was considering to be Hillary Clinton's VP. So all of a sudden, they're not alike at all? Are you kidding me? Like that's totally ridiculous, man. You can't possibly get that pissed about this. And that it's just like you're just getting mad at like people that dare to criticize somebody for it. And she points it out. She even admits it. It's kind of a strange. That's why I was playing just this part of it. And to be fair, earlier she said that Elizabeth Warren, and she even said it there. She said that Elizabeth Warren has she doesn't have a great record on some things. But she even admits it herself. She even says her record on this and that. It's not good. She doesn't get into details, but her record on Medicare, for her record on endless wars and the military-industrial complex, it's not good. Her foreign policy, all that stuff. Student loan debt, any of the student loan debt crisis, she's not great on that. I already went through it, so I'm not going to repeat it again. But the point is that she's had bad votes, she's had bad policy positions, and apparently Emma doesn't want to admit this. I don't really understand what's going on. And it would be to her advantage to come out and just instead of putting out a video about how because Bernie Sanders likes her and because she's stated some progressive positions that she has, supposedly that means she's wonderful. I think she even stated early in the video that she's done more. So she's more to the left than Bernie is on economic policies. Based on what? Point out the policies. Point out what bills what legislation, what things she's done that shows that she's more progressive than Bernie Sanders on economic policies and economic ideas. Tell me. I would love to hear it if that's truly the case. Creating the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau does not make you a progressive. That's one good thing that she did. That doesn't mean you're totally exempt from being criticized on economic policies and makes you more left than Bernie Sanders. you want to look at the entirety of Bernie Sanders' economic record, he's probably had maybe 1 or 2 bad votes at the most. But, people are saying, oh, it led to the financial crash or whatever. No, it's bullshit. But, like they say that kind of stuff. But apparently it was a little bit of like a deregulation policy and stuff. So I'm just trying to be honest here and say, yeah, Bernie Sanders isn't perfect on economic policy, but he's been calling it, he's been going after the Fed for years. He's passed or at least pushed for legislation to audit the Fed, which I believe he did with Ron Paul. And he's done all these things. He's called out the head of the Federal Reserve, criticized them, called them out, during committee hearings and shit. So Bernie Sanders he is more progressive than Elizabeth Warren. Period. That is end of the story. I mean, there's no way to deny that he's a progressive. Now, she says that, but she tries to pretend as if oh, well, Elizabeth Warren is close. And the fucking media, the mainstream media says this shit too. I can't stand it. They constantly try and push that talking point to its bullshit. It's based on nothing. They're so similar. And they constantly want to try and pit them against each other too, which is funny. The media pretends as if oh yeah, she has the same exact. Chris Eliza was saying it in the same fucking segment I covered on The Point or whatever, when I covered it on my last podcast. He said the same exact thing. They have the same liberal structural change policies. She always talks about structural change, but she never really gets into the details, and it's mostly on economic policies. And even those economic policies are the same things that Bernie Sanders has already done. Just like the whole wealth tax thing that I talked about, Bernie Sanders already introduced that. So how is she more progressive than him on economics? It's just not right, man. It's not true. And to say that she's not the same as Hillary Clinton, I don't think she's a carbon copy of Hillary Clinton, but she's very similar to her for sure. There's no doubt about it. And why else would she endorse Hillary Clinton? Now, Bernie Sanders, to be fair, endorsed Hillary Clinton too, but he did it later after he was able to pass some reforms in the DNC and then, the whole kind of Democratic Party platform and stuff. And then eventually at the Democratic National Convention, he endorsed her, or before that endorsed her. And then, did he endorse her? He may have endorsed her after that. But anyway, he did end up endorsing her. And he gave a rousing speech at the convention and said, we have to vote for Hillary Clinton to defeat Donald Trump, blah, blah, blah. So Bernie Sanders endorsed her too, but that doesn't mean that he loves Hillary Clinton, but at the same time, he didn't after Elizabeth Warren did. Elizabeth Warren did right after Hillary Clinton was declared the winner of the California primary, which had tons of controversy and people were throwing up voter rolls and stuff. So there was a lot of issues going on in the Democratic primary in California. So that's another issue for another day. But yeah, but Elizabeth Warren is not a progressive. She's at best just your typical left-ish Democrat at best. That's at best. At worst, she's a center right type person. I wouldn't be surprised, especially when it comes to her foreign policy record and kind of mainly stuff having to do with foreign policy, and the fact that she wouldn't be committed to Medicare for all, and she wouldn't be committed to canceling student loan debt and medical debt and stuff like that, so she's not a progressive. Just stop with that talking point. It's not going to work. Emma Vigeland can yell and scream all she wants, but it's not going to convince anybody. And she's been getting a ton of shit on YouTube from people that have blocked her or unfollowed her, and they're like, yeah, you just seem to be and I've said it too, she pretty much seemed to be an arm of the Elizabeth Warren campaign, essentially, even though she claims to love, Bernie Sanders more and support him more, but she seems to be just standing constantly for Elizabeth Warren because she's so offended by how she gets called out for her positions on things. God forbid you call her out Elizabeth Warren, you don't think she's a progressive, and all of a sudden, I don't know, that means you're a smear merchant or whatever. So it's bullshit, and it's not really helping her status among the progressive community. So recently, I think it was kind of beginning to middle of last month. There was a segment that came out, and I'm going to be playing it for you guys later, where they talked about on CNBC, which is it's the sister station of MSNBC, owned by the parent company, and their parent company is Comcast, and they basically cover like, you know, Wall Street type news and stocks and everything, and they are very heavily corporate and support just corporate Democrats and corporate Republicans and the whole kind of corporatized system. And they did a segment with Jim Cramer where he said that Elizabeth Warren is feared by Wall Street and is feared by the kind of the establishment, and you know, if she's president, she's going to be doing terrible things that the elites are going to hate, and maybe she will. Like I said before, I said in an earlier segment, she's decent on economic issues, especially at least what she talks about. She is. Created the whole, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and stuff like that. And other stuff, she's pushed decent reforms, but, is she going to be better than Bernie Sanders? I don't think so at all. Especially when she can't even call herself a, socialist, but, Democratic socialist at least. But it's weird because CNBC's coverage has been really it's been weird. Like they're talking, so it hasn't necessarily been contradictory. Initially, I kind of thought it was, but it hasn't been necessarily contradictory, especially at least when you look at somebody like Jim Cramer. And Jim Cramer, when he did his commentary, he was very they were talking about it. So I'm gonna play it. Let me play the clip for you guys because it's important that you guys listen to this first, and then we can kind of get into why kind of what has changed since then, and then. Because it seems like people's opinions are kind of changing, and this is not new. This is something I've talked about on other episodes where people are starting to warm up to her, and she's kind of becoming kind of more cozy with, the CEOs of big banks, especially becoming cozy with like the head of J.P. Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. But that's something I'll get into a little bit more. But let me just play this segment here with Jim Cramer. This segment was from September 10th, and this got a lot of attention, and some people think it may have been a head fake, and I think it was, but let me play the clip for you guys first, and then we'll discuss it on the other side.
Wells did not have, there's banks have been talking, and they do not have good net interest margin. I still wonder what it's like to have no CEO. What's that like, just?
You've been saying that for months.
Are you talking about Wells Fargo? I mean, they have acting. By the way, most of the U.S. government's got acting.
Yeah, but see, that I don't know what the government is per share. Right. But Wells Fargo per share has been an underperformer. I don't know. In the end, I know Elizabeth Warren, don't listen. I favor CEOs.
You think it's positive to have a CEO?
I think, yeah. I mean,
listen, it's...
Maybe not.
It is fascinating that they're having such a hard time finding somebody to take this
Intel had a hard find. Now, hard job finding.
Yeah, Bob Swan actually ended up... Well, right.
Yeah, but
this has been harder.
But how is it possible that this company cannot find a CEO? I mean, are they worried about Elizabeth Warren attacking that? She or he would be.
Of course they are, and of course that person is. Why wouldn't they be?
I don't know.
If she becomes the president, what do you think is going to happen to the banks?
Well, it would be a suboptimal situation for the banks.
Right.
You think Elizabeth Warren pushes banks into it? Well, they're already down 20% from the highs, but.
Yeah, I just think that there were these hearings in the 30s where they brought rich people in front of Congress and just kind of trashed them. It was effective.
Well, about 20 years later, we had the least discrepancy in incomes in the 50s and 60s, all right?
I don't know what's going to happen. Look, I've got to tell you, when you get off the desk and you talk to executives, they're more fearful of her winning. I mean, I've never heard anybody say, look, she's got to be stopped. She's got to be stopped. I don't know. She's very, she keeps going up in the polls.
She's raised a ton of money.
She's going to win Iowa, I believe. She's a very compelling figure on the stump.
By the way, I hear it too, and it's another reason why companies are being implored to do things now. If you want to get something done,
you really think
M&A or anything, think about doing it soon, because come early to mid 2020, if Elizabeth Warren's rolling along, everybody's going to be like, that's it.
So you're hearing it too?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder what China says about that exact question.
Oh, yeah.
Boy, she is so anti-pollution in China. Remember, she is a person who talks about the, like Mark Benioff in his book coming out, stakeholder, the Earth. The Earth is a stakeholder. Don't worry about that.
Benioff would probably be a supporter, wouldn't he?
We don't know. We don't know. Benioff is very close to the vest. Yes, very close to the vest.
So that was, I would say that was a little bit of a tepid. I would say that was a kind of a tepid endorsement by Jim Cramer of Elizabeth Warren. I don't think he's like full out, going like, oh yeah, she's awesome. She's all. We'll get to that in a second. But in that segment, which was again September 10th, he doesn't seem to be like fully on board with her. He's just kind of talking about how the banks might be scared of her, and this was something that Elizabeth Warren, she quote tweeted this segment that was posted on Twitter, and she was like, oh yeah, I totally approve of this message. Yeah, I totally I'm hated by the big banks. Now, are you telling me that the people that consider Bernie Sanders a socialist, are you telling me that they're more fearful of Elizabeth Warren than they are Bernie? I can't believe that. And if you talk to any of the, because all these idiot CEOs of different companies are going out there like, yeah, that Bernie Sanders guy crazy. He's crazy. Crazy Bernie, just like Trump says. And he's a totally crazy guy. I don't even want to consider him. Blah, blah, blah. I don't even want to talk about him. I think it was the head of Home Depot or something was on Fox Business talking about that, saying that. But yeah, so people are definitely, in my opinion, are more fearful of Bernie Sanders than they are of Elizabeth Warren. Now, when I mentioned before I played that segment, I mentioned that it's possible that that segment with Jim Cramer and those two other guys, because it was like kind of the host, like a kind of a semi round table. Well, it's three guys, so tri-table of hosts talking in the early mornings, covering what's going on Wall Street, and they're all talking about how Elizabeth Warren is going to be, the people are fearing that Elizabeth Warren, if she becomes president, is going to affect a lot of the companies out there and the CEOs of the big financial institutions or whatever, just big companies are going to be pissed, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of progressives have come out and said that this is a head fake and that this might be something that was manufactured by the Elizabeth Warren campaign. Or in some cases, she spoke to Jim Cramer, or she spoke to some of these people, and she got them to say, yeah. It's totally, everybody's totally scared. Everybody on Wall Street is totally scared of Elizabeth Warren becoming president. That's totally true. And she says, I approve this message, blah blah. I don't want to get conspiratorial. I don't know if that's necessarily a conspiratorial position, but at the same time, it just seems a little bit too convenient, considering this next article and also further Jim Cramer clips. So before I get to Cramer again, I want to I want to read this article for you guys from CNBC. And the title of this article is Silicon Valley Donors Starting to Back Elizabeth Warren Despite Her Pledge to Break Up Big Tech. Now, did she quote this article? Did she quote tweet this article and say, yeah, I totally agree with this? I doubt it. So let's get into the details of it. It's a little bit more nuanced, but still, the title pretty much says what the article is saying. So it says, Senator Elizabeth Warren has vowed to break up big technology companies such as Google, Facebook, and Amazon if she becomes president. Even so, a growing contingent of Democratic donors in Silicon Valley, where many of these behemoth tech companies are located, are looking to support Warren's 2020 campaign. Interesting. A series of interviews with some of California's most successful investors revealed that the Democrat from Massachusetts is connecting with these techies through her myriad policy proposals. What's more, they are beginning to believe she may be the best candidate to defeat President Donald Trump. With her continued surge in the polls, they are starting to acknowledge that their preferred candidate, former Vice President Joe Biden, may not end up being the nominee. The decision by these donors to start falling in line behind Warren comes as other primary participants are trying to gain their support. Biden, Senator Kamala Harris, and South Bend, Indiana Mayor Pete Buttigieg have been regular visitors to the Bay Area for high-dollar fundraisers. Meanwhile, Warren has sworn off taking part in big money events in the primary because she's doing it in the general, and has vowed to not be swayed by wealthy business leaders. Her campaign put up a giant billboard in the heart of Silicon Valley calling for the breakup of big tech. And then quoting a California-based money manager, and they spoke on the condition of anonymity, and they say, I think people are begrudgingly coming around to admit that she's the best answer because Bernie Sanders is crazy. The guy they thought they were going to get in Joe Biden is looking like an old man, and I think they are looking around and wondering who else is there. Said, and then they continue on saying, she seems pretty sharp. She knows the drill in Washington. She seems on it and has a plan. So let's just pause there. When this person says she knows the drill in Washington, that means that she knows how the donors and lobbyists and stuff, she knows how that works. She knows how that stuff operates. In other words, she's going to be there in Washington as president. Obviously, if she is president, she's going to be doing the bidding of the donors and the lobbyists in Washington. She knows the drill, so she knows what's going on. Now, you can say that to somebody about Bernie Sanders. Bernie knows the drill in Washington. In other words, he knows that it's a corrupt system, and he's going to do something to put an end to it. So you can honestly, to be fair, you can use that term to say anything. But this person is saying it in the context of, hey, Bernie Sanders is crazy. Joe Biden is whatever, an old man, and he's sounding crazy, obviously, which is ironic when you call Bernie Sanders crazy, but they mean crazy on policy, and which is not, but they just say that. So they're saying it from the perspective of Elizabeth Warren is good enough that she's going to be doing what we want her to do. And, she's going to be bowing at our feet and going to be, doing what we ask of her. So, and then she knows the drill in Washington. That's what it is. There's no other way to decipher that when you look at it from the perspective of these people liking Elizabeth Warren. It'd be different if they didn't like her. So they don't like Bernie Sanders. He's crazy because God forbid Bernie Sanders goes and changes the system in Washington and doesn't end up taking lobbyist and donor money. Whereas Warren is doing that. And she's definitely taking part in fundraisers, and she said she's going to take donor and PAC money in the general election too, as I mentioned before. So the next part says Warren's plan to break up the leading technology corporations argues that they have too much power and an unfair advantage over their smaller competitors. Today's big tech companies have too much power over our economy, our society, and our democracy, she said in a Medium post in March. They've bulldozed competition, used our private information for profit, and tilted the playing field against everyone else. That's why my administration will make big structural changes to the tech sector to promote more competition, including breaking up Amazon, Facebook, and Google, she added. And the next part says the growing contingent of tech insiders looking to Warren started to take shape in the second quarter when she raised at least $19 million. At that time, she saw two contributions from Chamath Palihapitiya, I'm going to butcher this, Palihapitiya, a Silicon Valley-based venture capitalist, a $2,800 donation from an investor and former Shark Tank star Chris Sacca, and a $2,500 contribution from John McFarland, the founder of audio company Sonos Inc. Warren has yet to announce how much she raised in the third quarter. By the way, the number came out in the third quarter. She ended up raising $24.6 million. So just so to update this article, and it says Palihapitiya, also a partial owner of the Golden State Warriors, which happens to be my favorite basketball team ever since I was basically a kid. That's very unfortunate that a Golden State Warriors partial owner is giving money to Elizabeth Warren, but okay. Not that I would want them to give to Bernie, but it's unfortunate that they have to be involved in all of this scam. So this guy said in an email that the growing support for Warren comes down to her being the equivalent to Trump on the progressive side of the political spectrum, but more policy focused. He contributed $5,000 to Warren's campaign in the second quarter. Damn. The truth is that most of the U.S. hasn't participated in the financial gains of Wall Street or Silicon Valley, in that there is a lot of frustration about systems led by groups of insiders. Paliha Patia said, Trump was the populist right's reaction to this. Warren is the left's. The difference between the two is that Warren is more disciplined, policy-focused, and detail-oriented than Trump. She is Trump's greatest threat to re-election. That is not true at all. Okay, first of all, again, you got to read between the lines. You got to check out the code word here. It's at near the end of the quote from this guy. He says the difference between the two is that Warren is, quote, more disciplined, policy-focused, and detail-oriented than Trump. So when he says, this person says more disciplined, they're basically saying that, obviously, Elizabeth Warren doesn't put out mean tweets. She doesn't say controversial things. She doesn't rock the boat. She doesn't, cause any problems for the big bank, the CEOs of big banks, the financial sector. She doesn't cause problems for anybody. She's just kind of whatever. She's she keeps everything pretty low key. Doesn't cause any problems for us. That's the kind of people these CEOs of big banks want. They don't want somebody like Trump, because Trump goes out there and says things that pisses these people off. And even though a lot of them are making them his bitch, making him their bitch. They still don't like his cadence, the way he talks, the way he interacts with people, the way he's so outspoken. And who's also very outspoken? Bernie Sanders. They don't want Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders is not disciplined. Bernie Sanders is definitely policy-focused and definitely detail-oriented. I don't know if they think that, but he is. But Bernie Sanders is not disciplined in the way they want politicians to be disciplined. They want politicians to be disciplined to not rock the boat and not cause any problems for the financial sector, for the big banks. So that's what they mean when they say that kind of stuff. And to say that she is Trump's greatest threat to re-election that's totally untrue. Bernie Sanders is undoubtedly Donald Trump's biggest threat. Not only because of the fact that Bernie has zero baggage, but he's actually also an actual democratic socialist or leftist, progressive, actual socialist essentially. And Donald Trump constantly whines about socialism all the time. And Bernie Sanders is the real deal. Whereas Elizabeth Warren is going to be called a socialist, and then she's going to have to respond by saying, no, I'm not a socialist. And then everybody's going to be like, okay, so what are your policies? Oh yeah, I'm just in favor of, putting regulations on big banks, big structural change. She's going to put all these platitudes and cliches, just like Hillary Clinton, and she's going to end up losing to Trump. I guarantee that's what's going to happen, on top of the fact that she's not in favor of the actual progressive policies that people claim she's in favor of, and she claims she's in favor of. She's not. So she's got tons of issues in that regard. Next part says, an aide to a startup investor who has donated to Warren's campaign, along with many others running for president, said Silicon Valley contributors may organize small dollar fundraisers for her in the Bay Area, and insisted that their support comes from the idea that Silicon Valley is not all in favor of big tech's dominance. Most of Silicon Valley doesn't work for big tech, and a lot of big tech employees have values contrary to their employees, this aide said, later pointing to the walkout that took place at Google offices around the world in November. Silicon Valley venerates competence, vision, disruption, and they see those qualities in Warren. So I just want to say real quick, the whole idea of these startup companies wanting to be able to compete more with the big tech companies, and the fact that she claims she wants to, break up these big tech companies. I get it. That's an understandable reason to support her. But at the end of the day, the details of what she wants to do are so vague. And when she goes out there and calls herself a capitalist to the bone, she's not really doing herself any favors among the left. Because what the left wants is, now the left majority of the people on the left are not post-capitalist. Majority of the left, I would say, are probably social democratic or democratic socialists. They don't agree with getting rid of capitalism. They're not post-capitalism. Bernie Sanders is not post-capitalist. But what he does believe is that capitalism should not be running all parts of the country economy. So obviously when it comes to healthcare, capitalism shouldn't be involved. When it comes to education, capitalism shouldn't be involved. So like everything, all schools being privatized, getting rid of public schools, he doesn't believe in that. He doesn't believe in, he doesn't believe obviously in the banks having as much power. He doesn't even believe in the existence of billionaires. He wants to get rid of billionaires, as I read in an article earlier. Now, does Elizabeth Warren believe in billionaires? I would think she does. And when she talks about, reforming Wall Street and putting a I guess somewhat of a stranglehold on how Wall Street operates and how they do their shit, she's not talking about getting rid of billionaires. And at the end of the day, that is something that needs to happen. You do need to get rid of billionaires. There's one thing to have millionaires, but to have billionaires is ridiculous. Because when you talk about having billionaires, you're talking about people that are just way too rich. Nobody needs $1 billion. You don't need $1 billion. That's just ridiculous. And it's ridiculous to think that the person who believes in capitalism but just wants to do reforms on capitalism, that they are going to be able to solve the problems unless they agree with doing actual real structural change. So what Elizabeth Warren does, she talks about big structural change, but she never really gets into the specific details of how. Now she talks about, I'm going to break up these tech companies, for example. That's a specific example. But ultimately, what is that going to do? It's going to make the other smaller tech companies more competitive. Now, to a capitalist, that's wonderful. To a person that likes, competition, that likes markets, that's wonderful for them. But when it comes to people that are worried about the existence of tech companies and getting bigger, so let's just say you create competition for those bigger tech companies, Google, Facebook, all those, Google, Facebook, Amazon, stuff like that. When you're creating competition for them, it's in a matter of, if it's in a matter of oh, I'm going to try and help all those small startup companies get bigger, that's not necessarily a good thing. And it's actually not a good thing. Because what it does is that you are trying to make those big tech companies less big. You want to make them smaller, and then you want to make those smaller companies bigger. So what you're doing is you're sort of perpetuating the capitalist system that doesn't really fix the problems that we're ultimately having. And you're just going to help smaller companies get bigger, and then what's going to happen to them? Are you going to be able to regulate them? Are you going to let them get bigger? Because ultimately, when it comes down to it, rich companies, rich people, they want to get richer. They want to get richer than they already are. They don't want to give away more of their money. They want to get richer. And if you put regulations on them, it's going to cause problems for their bottom line. It's going to affect their bottom line. They don't like that. They want to have as many opportunities as possible to make more money. And if you take that opportunity away from them, that's not going to be good, and they're not going to like that. And these smaller tech companies don't need to become bigger. What needs to happen is that you need to motivate the smaller tech companies. So just like small businesses, right? Just like a small business exists, you need to try and maintain the existence of these smaller tech companies and not allow those big tech companies to get bigger. So the idea of breaking up the big tech companies is fine, but that doesn't mean you need to go out there and create competition for small tech companies to become bigger. So my general point is getting the smaller tech companies to get bigger is not going to solve our problems. What we need to do is we need to put heavy regulations on the big companies that exist, and then make sure that the other companies that are trying to get bigger also don't try and get bigger. You know, you have to try and maintain some sort of middle balance where companies are not able to get bigger and become, huge conglomerates and big corporations, multinational corporations, because the more of that we have, the more problems we're going to have with income inequality in this country, and we're going to have to deal with possibilities of deregulation, essentially. So obviously, like Bernie Sanders getting into office or whoever, putting regulations on banks, those aren't going to stay. You need to maintain those regulations, and once we have a Republican president at some point, they're going to get rid of all those regulations. So that's putting minor regulations on banks. Big banks, and then Wall Street, and then breaking up the big tech companies is not going to solve all our problems. There's much more that needs to go into it than just that, I believe. And then let me read the last part here, or the last part of this. This part that I'm reading is just kind of one tiny paragraph here. It says, employees from Alphabet Inc., Google's holding company, have combined to give Warren just over $126,000 since she officially entered the race in February. According to the nonpartisan Center for Responsive Politics, Google employees have given approximately $32,000, according to Federal Election Commission records. Business leaders are clamoring for clarity on policy, even more than the policies themselves, as the 2020 election gets closer, said Aquila. I don't know who that's referring to. Yeah, he just seems to be giving some sort of quotes here. But it says, what business is looking for is a period of stability and calm. Aquila said it's less a partisan issue and more about bringing economic conditions that allow businesses to focus on business instead of wondering about the political world every 2 minutes. Many CFOs have told me over the years, I can deal with higher tax rates or lower tax rates. I just need to know what the tax rate will be. An advisor to one of California's bundlers who's supporting a rival campaign admitted the network has taken notice of rank and file employees at these larger tech companies donating to Warren. This consultant said they believe these donations are flowing due to Warren's ability to connect with employees who believe the tech giants have become too powerful and that she's the best bet to beat Trump. They see it up close and personal, and are even victims of some and some of its problems. Plus, they're just plain progressive and can't stand Trump, the advisor explained. So, yeah, when it comes to these people, I mean, they think they're progressive. They're not really progressive, but yeah, a lot of them do hate Trump. That's not surprising, actually. That's like a totally unexpected thing. When they talk about, I just want stability and calm, and I don't really care about my lower and higher tax rates. I just want to know what it is. I just want to know what it is and stuff. Somebody was saying that earlier. One of these people that I quoted. I mean, these people are mostly, they're just concerned about what their bottom line is going to be. If their bottom line is going to be, the same as it is, they're happy. If it's going to be a little bit less, that's good. But if it's going to be a lot less, they're not going to be happy about that, obviously. But that's all they care about. They just care about the bottom line. They just care about making money. When you're a small tech company or a small business, and you want to make more. You want to live a better life. You want to make more money. That's the kind of business you get into. You get into the tech companies, get into the big banks, all that kind of stuff. And it's one of those things where you have to try and put a stranglehold on them as much as possible instead of becoming friends and buddy with them. And when you're Elizabeth Warren and you're getting support from these people, you're hoping that there's going to be as little regulation on what you do as possible, as much as possible. Now, these people can talk about how I'm okay with less taxes, and then I understand or want the smaller banks or startups and stuff to compete with the bigger tech companies like Google, Facebook, and Amazon. Honestly, I think that's just stuff they say. I just think they just say that just so they can warm up to Elizabeth Warren and make it seem as if that's what Elizabeth Warren is going to do. Now, whether Elizabeth Warren is going to break up those Google, Facebook, and Amazon and whatever else, I don't know if she's truly going to do that and commit to it. But if she is going to do that, that's a good thing. But that's not enough. And the fact that, like I said, these people are supporting her is a red flag to me. That's a problem. And I'm worried that it's going to be she's going to end up flip-flopping, because once she becomes president, if she becomes president, I'm afraid that she's going to flip-flop, and she's going to end up doing the complete opposite of what she's promised, because she's being liked by these people in tech, in the tech companies, the Silicon Valley, and then she's cozying up with the heads of big banks and stuff. So she's making the rounds and trying to get these people on board with her, and she's trying to make sure that they like her more and that she can get their approval. So that brings us back to Jim Cramer again. And now, like I said, in that first segment I played for you guys, he didn't speak overly glowing of her, but just 2 days later, in a segment that they did on CNBC, he was fawning all over, and then he'll do another one I'll show you in a second too. But let's play this one real quick, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Warren is front and center in all the issues that we talk about.
She retweeted us for a second straight day. I think the lead of Drudge all morning long, all overnight, was Wall Street, she must be stopped. I said the words you delivered on this show at the beginning of the week.
That's what they say to me over and over again. I mean, they don't even want her to. There are people who say, how can you put her on? How can you put her? As if she's like, some sort of pariah. She's a senator of the United States of America.
She's a very serious, rigorous person.
You bet she is.
And
smart as a whip.
And somewhat relentless.
One day I'll tell you about how I met her.
Strong characteristic for people who achieve things.
And you will say, she is rigorous. She tweets and then sends you to position papers.
Yes.
She does not tweet. She's not calling anyone a bonehead.
Although, despite the fact that you brought this line to the conversation that we're looking at right here, you have a soft spot for her, it seems.
Yes.
Because?
Because I think that she has thought about the people who are doing not well in the country, and that is great.
Can you say yet? Would you vote for her?
I don't talk about who I vote.
Right.
I don't talk about who I vote, and I've been pretty split in whom I vote over time, if you want to look at my record. Actually, right down the middle.
Okay, well, that's a red flag. For me, that's a huge red flag. So when you have somebody that's working for CNBC, especially one of their biggest, most well-known personalities in Jim Cramer, saying that, fawning over Elizabeth Warren, oh, she's so smart as a whip, and I have a soft spot for her, and, all that stuff, like, that's a red flag, man. That is not good. And I'm going to tell you guys in a second. I have one more video I'm going to play for you guys, but I'm going to tell you guys in a second why Jim Cramer, why he's a little bit of an issue, and why people obviously may not trust him. And he has a little bit of a questionable history in what he's said, what he's done. So let's see here. So I've got one more clip for you guys. This one was much later. So like I said, the first clip was September 10th, the one I played earlier in the segment. September 10th. The second one was September 12th that I just played for you. This one was from October 1st. So just a couple of days, just a few, 4 or 5 days ago. So this one is much like, we're getting up to like the highest degree of fawning, praise. And you'll see it here. So check this out, and then we'll discuss this one as well.
Mark Zuckerberg is rallying the troops in a leaked audio of a meeting with Facebook employees obtained by The Verge. He slams Senator Elizabeth Warren's call to break up the social network.
Like Elizabeth Warren, who thinks that the right answer is to break up the companies, if she gets elected president, then I would bet that we will have a legal challenge, and I would bet that we will win the legal challenge. Does that still suck for us? Yeah. I mean, I don't have to, have a major lawsuit against our own government. I mean, that's not like the position that you want to be in when you're, it's like we care about our country and want to work with our government to do good things. And but look, at the end of the day, if someone's going to try to threaten something that existential, you go to the mat and you fight.
It's tough to understand. The audio there, he says, we'll go to the mat. If she tries to break us up, I would bet that we will have a legal challenge, and I would bet that we will win.
Well, this is that new form of antitrust, which reminds me of the old form when Standard Oil was too powerful. This is Facebook's too powerful, let's break it up. That's a different form of antitrust than we're used to, which was our prices going up. because of monopoly.
Right, and in this case, they're not, so you
They're
still
not.
have to deal with the actual law.
Well, the law, David, the doctrine's pretty clear. You do not go after companies because they're powerful. That's against the doctrine.
That is right. I think in interviews that I've done with the antitrust DOJ chief, Makin Delrahim, he's made that point.
I know.
You have to prove anti-competitive.
Right, but, Senator Warren would... they would be a different regime if Senator Warren came in. A lot of people are talking about...
It'd be a very different regime in a lot of different ways, yes, we know that.
Yeah, it would be... Would she allow us to do what we do?
The three of us?
I think so.
We talk about stocks.
If she tries to stop us, we're going to the mat.
We are going to the mat
too.
David,
Zuckerberg.
or we only let it do bear case.
Or the mattresses.
Yes, David, ETFs are going, this. We go to the mattresses.
Yeah, I think we'll be okay.
But no, the fear of Senator Warren is getting overblown.
Well, Bernie
there's
it's Sanders who raises $25 million in Q3, the most of any Democratic hopeful so far.
I can't stop getting Sanders' email. I got 5 Sanders emails yesterday. Between the first game and the second game, I got, just give me $2.83. It cost me $2.83 to read his ill-advised email. The guy does spam. He gets you no matter where you are.
Well, he's going to be around for a while with that kind of cash balance.
He's been around forever. Yeah. But I want to stop the fear of Senator Warren. I really think that that's a mistake. I think that there is such a thing called Congress, and I also don't think she's nearly as anti-business. I also think that some of these FANG stocks are so bad, I wish they'd break them up.
Ding, ding, ding. See, she's not that anti-business. I want to stop the fear of Elizabeth Warren. I think the controversy about Elizabeth Warren is being overblown. See that? So when you have somebody on a network that is, they're out there to advocate for full-on, Wall Street should be able to do whatever they want, and blah, 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 and deregulation is good, and, not to be fair, he was saying, she cares about what people are going through in this country. He obviously didn't get into details, but that's, if he knew about that, then he would get into that. And he's done interviews with Elizabeth Warren. So listen, man, this is a serious red flag when it comes to, the direction that this country needs to go into when when we're trying to stop any kind of future crashes, we're starting to stop any kind of further deregulation, tax cuts, all this stuff. My fear is that Elizabeth Warren is going to do what these people and their elitist buddies in Wall Street want them to. I have almost zero trust that she would actually be a true hawk on holding these big corporations accountable. Now, when it comes to somebody like Jim Cramer, now why is him embracing her and fawning over her such a big deal? Because unfortunately, Jim Cramer has a history of doing things and saying things that unfortunately it's very unfortunate and it's very not good, and it should worry a lot of people that are out there trying to obviously push for more progressive ideas. So back in 2008, in March of 2008, he got a viewer question from somebody who said, and this was on his show Mad Money. He says, the person asked them, should I be worried about Bear Stearns in terms of liquidity and get my money out of there? Cramer responded, no. Bear Stearns is not in trouble. And mind you, this is how many months? 1, 2, I would say about 6 months before the crash, the big financial crash in 2008. So, and that was I think it was around September, I think it happened. September, October. I think it was September. And then, so he says, no, Bear Stearns is not in trouble. If anything, they're more likely to be taken over. Don't move your money from Bear. On March 14, 2008, Bear Stearns stock fell 92% on news of a Fed bailout and $2 a share takeover by JP Morgan. On March 17, 2008, Cramer claimed his statements were made in regards to the liquidity of Bear Stearns brokerage accounts as opposed to Bear Stearns common stock. but allaying concerns about the account holder's liquidity held in a Bear Stearns brokerage account. Kramer later wrote about the incident, "I did tell an emailer that his deposit in his account at Bear Stearns was safe, but through a clever soundbite, Jon Stewart, and subsequently Frank Rich is a writer for New York Times, and then Jon Stewart is obviously the then host of The Daily Show, neither of whom have bothered to listen to the context of the pulled quote, pass off the notion of account safety as an out-and-out buy recommendation. The absurdity astounds me. If you called Mad Money and asked me about Citigroup, I would tell you that the common stock might be worthless, but I would never tell you to pull your money out of the bank because I was worried about its solvency. Your money is safe in Citi as I said it is in Bear. As I said it was in Bear. The fact that I was right rankles me even more." So, and then they go on further, and somebody criticizes him too, and then he goes on The Daily Show and gets basically torn a new one by Jon Stewart, and obviously Jon Stewart's wonderful satirical fashion. But yeah, he has a really troubled history of going out there and advocating on behalf of these big corporations and saying what things are wonderful and they're going great. He claims he meant something else, but it's bullshit. And things are going wonderfully, things are going great. But don't worry about it, guys. Everything's gonna be fine. Totally, yeah. Keep buying. Don't worry. The liquidity is not an issue. Blah blah blah. So, and then we ended up having the financial recession in 2008, late mid to late 2008, September, like I said, and that's not to say Jim Cramer is at fault for obviously the financial crash. That nobody is saying that, but I'm saying that it just kind of puts his reputation into question and makes you wonder if he's the guy that said that, and then he's now telling us how great Elizabeth Warren is, who's supposed to be like this hawk on financial hawk and calling out the banks and putting regulations on them and holding their feet to the fire. If she's that kind of a person and he's embracing her, I don't know. And I'm not saying he's a right winger, but he's going to support corporate Democrats. I'm sure he loved Obama. I'm sure he would love Biden. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that he's going out and supporting this supposedly progressive politician is a big thing, man. That's something that people should definitely be worried about. And that's an endorsement, or if you want to call it an endorsement, but that's an endorsement or praising from somebody I wouldn't want to be praised by. And like I said, Elizabeth Warren has done interviews with Jim Cramer where they've talked and he's fawned over her like he did in these segments and stuff. So, I mean, and those 3 segments, each segment, one after another, each one of them got worse. The first one said, "Oh, the banks are scared of Elizabeth Warren." Second one says, "Oh, yeah, I've got a soft spot for Elizabeth Warren." And then the last one, he's just totally praising her and saying she knows everything, she's wonderful, and she's got all these great things. Like, no, she's going to be, if you go based on what Jim Cramer and CNBC is saying, and to be fair, he doesn't represent all of CNBC, what CNBC believes, but if they're acting like that towards Elizabeth Warren, that's not a confidence boosting, praise. That's something that people should definitely, keep in the back of their minds if they're actually thinking about voting for Elizabeth Warren. And while for the rest of us out there that are progressives and we're questioning Elizabeth Warren, this just confirms what we already believed. And we know that she's going to be a corporatist, and she's going to be doing the same exact thing pretty much that Obama did, and not holding the bank's feet to the fire as she pretends or kind of claims or kind of portrays herself as being. So that's a big thing that we have to worry about. And we need Bernie Sanders. And obviously you could tell there Jim Cramer is not a big fan of Bernie Sanders, and that's fine. I don't want him to be. And, Bernie Sanders is going to hold these dudes' feet to the fire. He's going to make them shake in their boots, and that's exactly what we need to happen. So Tulsi Gabbard, Representative Tulsi Gabbard, came out with her position on healthcare reform and what her view on Medicare for All is. Now, she has been somebody that has said she supports Medicare for All, and she supports Bernie Sanders' position and all that stuff. Now, she doesn't she does believe, she has said in the past that she agrees with a form of healthcare or healthcare system or healthcare options, so that you can at least have supplementary care for certain, like I said before in past podcast segments, I pointed out how she believes in getting supplementary care for things like chiropractic work and plastic surgery, stuff like that. Things that maybe regular healthcare companies, or even a Medicare for All system, doctors, they don't want to cover, not healthcare companies. Just it's not covered. It's not going to be. It's not something that would be covered under Medicare for All, because it's not something that's considered like a health issue. So like plastic surgery, no, it's not a health issue. Chiropractor work, maybe people just don't feel like it's legitimate, and so they don't want to do that. Some forms of physical therapy apparently aren't covered. So it's kind of an issue that might come up with through Medicare for All. So anyway. It seems like, though, Tulsi Gabbard changed her position on where she stands with Medicare for All. Now, she may deny that, but it seems, based on the evidence that we're being shown here, that is the case. Now, I don't want to give too much away. I want you to listen to her state what her position on healthcare is. This is during an interview that she did with a it was a radio station. WBUR. This is a station in, not sure where it's located, but anyway, it's a radio station somewhere, and they did an interview with her talking about all different kinds of issues, and so they asked her about healthcare. So why don't you listen to her response here, and then we'll talk about it and expand and give a little bit more details on the other side.
When you say healthcare, are you for Medicare for All? If you can just tick through the list more specifically.
Yes, I prefer to call it Medicare Choice, where we are ensuring quality health care for all people, regardless of how little they may have in their pocket or their bank account, while maintaining their freedom of choice. If they've got an employer-sponsored plan or a union-sponsored plan that they're happy with, they should have the opportunity to do so. But the bottom line being that in the wealthiest nation in the world, there is no excuse that we still have far too many Americans who are underinsured or uninsured and who are one healthcare emergency away from total financial disaster.
Yeah. So the way I interpret what she said there is that she supports essentially what is very similar to Pete Buttigieg's plan, which I covered on my last podcast, which is, you have a choice. You have a choice to get health care from private care, so from like private insurance. And then if you want to keep it to, you want to get employer-free health care, you want to get employer-based health care and all that stuff, you can get that too, or you as a union or employer, whatever. So, no, that's not Medicare for All. And as you saw there, she called it Medicare Choice. So she almost said, I support Medicare for All. No, but I call it Medicare Choice. So what you're basically saying you support is you support a public option. So I am not a anti-Tulsi person. I'm not going to come out here and smear Tulsi. I'm not going to call her a liar or a deceiver or non-progressive. I think she's very progressive on many issues. On this one here, I don't know. Something happened where she decided to take a position that just is not the same thing as she claimed before. Now, before, like I said, she believed in supplementary care. Bernie supports supplementary care. But now she's saying, I support Medicare Choice. And that's just not good. That's not a good answer to give. That's not something that I can back. I support Medicare for All. I support single payer. Now, people are responding to a lot of the people that support Tulsi Gabbard. I'm not going to name any names. But a lot of people that support Tulsi Gabbard, they're coming out and saying, well, this is the same kind of care they get in Europe. They have private care options. They have, they have private care and public care options. They give options. Listen, I don't give a shit what they do in Europe. Now, that doesn't mean that their system isn't good. But I don't care what they do in Europe. I don't care what they do in Germany. I don't care what they do in whatever countries people have been mentioning. I care about what Bernie Sanders is pushing for. I care about what Medicare for All is. Medicare for All is what we need. We don't need Medicare Choice. And anytime that you have a private insurance option which is a rapacious, for-profit middleman, that wants to screw you over. Anytime you have those people involved in this kind of system, specifically healthcare, even if it's in a choice thing, even if it's a choice matter, anytime you have that there, you're giving those companies a chance to fuck you over. And they will, by the way, of course, which they do already. But you're giving them a chance to keep their foot in the door, put their foot in the door and be like, oh, okay, I still have a chance to get involved in the healthcare system and continue fucking over people like Blue Shield and Aetna and, and whatever it is, Pfizer and all these different companies, Blue Cross Blue Shield, all these companies that they're doing to people, like the way they fuck over people, they still have a chance to do it. But you have a public option too. Now, as Cenk Uygur explained before, and I've talked about before, and I played the clip before, what they do with the people, what they do with the with the people that within that kind of public option, private option system, is what they do is they put all the healthiest Americans on the the private insurance, and then they put all the sicker people on the public option, so the kind of the Medicare for all option, although it's not, it wouldn't be all, it would be the Medicare option or the public option. And then they end up putting all the sickest people there, and then that takes up all the costs. It fucks up the insurance pool, and then people end up getting screwed over because they end up getting poor quality care, and then the right wingers of the people say, oh, look how terrible the public option, look how terrible Medicare is, Medicare is terrible, it's not good enough, we need private care is better. So that's not what we need. We don't need to be told about how wonderful private care is, because whatever, great, it works for the rich people. People get private care. Yeah, of course private care is good because you're paying a ton of money for it. But a lot of people in this country don't have a ton of money. That's why they need to have public. They need to have public insurance. Well, not public insurance. They need to have Medicare for all. They need to have single payer, which is a public form of healthcare. And whether it's private funding of public institutions or public funding of private institutions, whatever it is, there's different versions of it in different parts of the world, in Europe and Scandinavia and stuff. But the point is that in Canada and UK and all that stuff. But what it comes down to is you need to have a single payer system where there is zero profit motive involved in the healthcare market. There doesn't need to be any kind of competition for which healthcare company can screw you over more. And when you put that private option in there, you're basically saying, yeah, an option for me to get, for me to have shittier care. And when you're talking about you might have great insurance under your employer. Okay, that doesn't help because that's not a good thing, because at the end of the day, you're spending money on that. So this Pete Buttigieg put out a plan. Oh, you're going to spend, I'm going to be able to spend, because he wrote an op-ed, which I covered last podcast. He says, oh yeah, people with, so-and-so, whatever, under my so-and-so plan are going to have to pay, based on the income, they're going to have to pay, one person said, I don't know how much the income was, but you're going to have to pay $354 a month. It's like, what the hell? Like, that's how much you're going to fucking pay for healthcare per month? That's ridiculous. And is it even good quality care? That's the question. But when it comes to the idea of employers, it costs them a ton of money too. Not only it costs, obviously, the person who's paying for the insurance, but it also costs the company money too. Whereas if you have a single payer system, it's reliant on the government. The company doesn't have to get involved. They don't have to insure you at all. And you also don't have to worry about getting fired and then losing your insurance. What if you get fired? What if you have to quit? What if you're moving jobs and your other job doesn't have as good quality care? So that means you have to stay in your shitty job that you don't want to be in because of your insurance, because of your health care. I mean, that's fucking, what is it? What is this, like a fascist theocratic system we're involved here? It is. That's technically what it is. So they force you to stay in the system just so they can keep giving healthcare and keep charging you, up the ass for care for healthcare that's not even that good. And then they charge you all this money, and then it costs the company money, the company that you're working for too. So anyway, so this whole thing about Tulsi being in favor of Medicare Choice is interesting. Medicare Choice, quote unquote. It's interesting because her own website says that she supports Medicare for all still. Now, from what I saw on her website, it doesn't have Medicare Choice on there, but if it does, she still says she supports Medicare for all. And let me just read you the key points here. It kind of says the same shit. It's the same kind of shit she's always said, but let's just reiterate it so people, so she's on the record and people, you guys know what I'm talking about. And it says, she lists a bunch of key points. She says, Tulsi strongly supports the Medicare for All Act and serves on the Medicare for All caucus. Tulsi believes that our present healthcare system is organized by and for the benefit of big insurance and pharmaceutical companies and not the American people, which must be changed. We pay for far more in this country on healthcare costs than any other country in the world and get worse results. Far too many Americans in this country are sick and unable to get the care they need. Tulsi supports Medicare for All to make sure that every American gets quality healthcare. We must also focus on reducing the cost of healthcare overall, preventive health, bring down cost of prescription drugs by allowing Medicare to negotiate those prices down and ensure transparency so people know exactly what the cost is and what they are paying for. Tulsi believes that the Affordable Care Act was a step in the right direction, but points out that issues remain with the number of uninsured and high costs related to deductibles, co-payments, and medical services and prescription drugs. I mean, honestly, right there, she's pretty much sounding just like Bernie Sanders. This is from her official website. I'll put the link in the description box for you guys to check out. This is from her own website. And all of a sudden, now she's talking about Medicare Choice and talking about people have to have a choice. People have to have a choice to be on their private insurance so they can keep paying high fucking deductibles. And then all the sickest people are going to be put on the, public healthcare, and then all the healthiest people are going to be put on the private healthcare. How the fuck does that help anybody? And how the fuck does it help for the company that you're working for to keep paying for your healthcare, and then you have to rely on, you gotta hope you don't get fired from your job so that you keep your healthcare? No, that's terrible. And it's not going to, again, you let those private companies, the private insurance companies, you allow them to have the foot in the door. It's going to keep giving them a chance to screw people over in this country and not give them quality care. That's the bottom line. And you ask anybody ask any progressive that is the truth. And I would think Tulsi knows this, but I don't know. Apparently she doesn't. And then her website even points out all the progressive legislation she's voted for too. So the progressive legislation that's essentially like helping to further push like Medicare for All. So it says Tulsi is a co-sponsor of HR 1384, Medicare for All Act of 2019, which would provide universal health care to all Americans. I believe that might be Pramila Jayapal's bill, which is actually better than Bernie Sanders' bill in the Senate. HR 4442, Connect for Health Act to promote cost savings and quality care under the Medicare program through the use of telehealth and remote patient monitoring services. HR 465, Prescription Drug Price Relief Act of 2019, to significantly lower prescription drug prices for patients in the United States by ending government-granted monopolies for manufacturers who charge drug prices that are higher than the median prices at which the drugs are available in other countries. HR 448, Medicare Drug Price Negotiation Act, to amend Title X XVII, which I believe is 8, Title 8 of the Social Security Act, to provide for the negotiation of lower covered Part D drug prices on behalf of Medicare beneficiaries. Sorry, it's an XVII, which means like Roman numerals. I think that means 8 though. HR 676, Expanded and Improved Medicare for All Act. Okay. HR 447, Affordable and Safe Prescription Drug Importation Act. So listen, her record shows that she is in favor of Medicare for All, but this whole Medicare Choice thing doesn't make a lot of sense. I don't know what happened. She went on naval, I think it was naval reserve duty, military reserve duty, and for like 2 weeks or something, she went and did a show with Dave Rubin, who's a right-wing grifter funded by the Koch brothers or whatever, and she went on these different things, and then she went on, like I said, she went to do her military service and stuff. I think it was for 2 weeks. I think she went to South Korea, I want to say, but anyway, she did all these things, and all of a sudden she comes back and she has this honestly really completely different position on healthcare, and it doesn't make any sense. I don't know who she spoke to. I don't know who told her to do this. I don't know who told her this is a good idea, but it's not. And I love Tulsi, man. I support her. I'm not one of the people that smears her and attacks her and says she's a right winger or loved by the white supremacists or I don't know, sucking up to the Indian fascist, Indo-fascist, or whatever the hell they call them, which is referring to Prime Minister Modi of India, which I don't have a lot of knowledge on what's going on regarding that. I spoke about the Kashmiri, the stuff that's happening in Kashmir and the Kashmiri people. But yeah, as far as when it comes to Modi and stuff, I just know he's like a fascist leader of India. And she's met with him and stuff though. But it seems to be like the same attacks that they use when it comes to Assad and how she's met with Assad. So I don't know. I don't put a lot of credence into those smears against her, and that's not something I'm gonna give airtime to on my show. But when it comes to this specific policy, it looks like she flip-flopped, and I wouldn't have expected this from her. Before I defended her, I did this segment. You guys can go check it out. I did a segment where I said, she's actually. She seems to still support supports Medicare for all, but she also believes in supplementary care. That's what seemed to be the case, and it was the case. But all of a sudden now it seems like that was a little bit of a kind of a tiptoe to the right, and this is even like a big step to the right, in my opinion. And she basically wants to do what Pete Buttigieg does and keep the healthcare, the public option, as a private option there with the public option, and that's really unfortunate. The only thing I can give credit to her for is at least she's not calling it Medicare for all and then having like a public option and private option, which Kamala Harris is doing, which is disgusting. I can't stand it. And she's just totally shameless in her grifting and her lying, essentially. But at least I can give credit to Tulsi for at least naming it something else. But I still don't agree with the policy, and she needs to figure out a different way of doing this. I mean, maybe she's trying to differentiate herself from Bernie. It's possible, and I understand that. And she has to, she's the one. She wants to become president, right? She's not running for nothing. She's running for a reason. She doesn't want to say, "Yeah, I'm with Bernie," like Warren is doing. Which, in my opinion, what Warren is doing is worse because she's going and pretending that she's in favor of Medicare for all. She doesn't even have her own healthcare policy. When she claims, "Oh, I have a plan for that. I have a plan for that," but she doesn't. So it's bullshit. So, yeah, she needs to. I don't know. She needs to change her position on this. She needs to backtrack big time or whatever, change it. I don't know. Whatever it is. But it's just, if you're trying to differentiate yourself from Bernie, I get it, but this is not the way to do it. And Tulsi is a lot smarter than that. So we'll see what happens. Maybe she'll do it. Maybe she won't. But at the end of the day, we need to get rid of the private healthcare system that is fucking us all over. And once we do that, we can actually have people getting decent, affordable health care that is not going to be beholden to the rapacious, for-profit, greedy insurance companies that all they want is our money and giving us shitty care while basically keeping us in our jobs because they're giving us our healthcare through our employer, and then God forbid if we lose those jobs, then we don't even have healthcare anymore. It's like they want to keep us on that insurance bandwagon, and we shouldn't have to be on there. We should have one type of single payer, government run Medicare for all system, and because that's going to be the best type of system that's going to help us, just like it is in every other industrialized nation. So the cringeworthy hacks at CNN decided to continue being cringy and continue fawning over the deep state and the establishment with this incredibly idiotic pro-military industrial complex, pro-deep state segment. And I don't know, you're just gonna... You're gonna be rolling your eyes and just totally just laughing and scoffing at the way they covered this specific squad of members of Congress here. But I don't want to give too much away. So check out this CNN segment, and then we'll talk about it on the other side.
Even before they were elected, you have adopted the badass label. These freshman congresswomen created their own group, the Badasses.
We were out running for Congress, across the country, and we kept running into each other. Badasses kind of came organically from the group since we all had either served in the military or in the CIA.
We have a lot in common. We all were working to flip seats, to be elected in places where voters may not typically vote for people like us or with our backgrounds. Navy veterans Mikey Sherrill and Elaine Luria, Air Force veteran Chrissy Houlihan, ex-CIA officers Alyssa Slotkin and Abigail Spanberger. A band of sisters who bonded while storming the unfamiliar terrain of politics.
Being able to text folks and say, I'm really getting hit up on this issue. How have you been handling it? I'm not sure how to translate my service into something that's relatable. How do you guys do that?
Translating their service is exactly what they did with their 180 on starting an impeachment inquiry. Going from no to yes after hearing President Trump admit he spoke to Ukraine's leader about Joe Biden. Others followed suit, including the House Speaker.
The specter of having the sitting president of the United States use leverage over a foreign leader to get dirt on an opponent. Like that very basic idea, I think, cut for us as national security people just close to the bone on, sort of our democratic institutions.
They penned an op-ed along with two freshman male veterans.
It was a great example of the power of teamwork and the power of kind of putting country above
Was
party.
it all for one and one for all?
Oh, absolutely.
I think we all sort of came to that conclusion together. We texted each other, and I think we were all going, okay, I think this is all changed. This is a bright line.
Backing an impeachment inquiry is risky political business for these congresswomen, already some of the most vulnerable in the House, Democrats who won in mostly Trump territory.
I believe that if I am out there explaining what these allegations are and why they are so deeply concerning, that people will understand why we had to take a stand. All of us in our prior lives, all the time, had to make hard calls for the reasons we thought were right when we knew that not everyone would understand or even know. And that, to me, is something I feel comfortable doing because I've always had to do it.
Even so, this is a group still trying to find their sea legs in politics.
I'm supervising the operation of nuclear reactors. I never turned to the reactor operator and said, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? It was new to jump into such a partisan environment.
These women brought change when they walked in the door, especially to this particular committee room where 4 of the women serve. We're sitting here surrounded by portraits of chairmen of this Armed Services Committee.
And it's likely that many of the men who surround us did not serve in that capacity. You were on ships, I was an engineer, you were a pilot. We were all, kind of experiencing our service in different ways.
I did 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military as a CIA officer, carrying a weapon and wearing my body armor. And I think there's something about having done prior service that connects you to the consequences of the decisions that are being made here and at the White House.
They represent swing districts, very different from another more famous female freshman group, the Squad. Okay, so I'm just going to put it out there. The group of freshman females that people know about is the Squad. Are you guys the anti-Squad?
What I tell people in my district, the left wing of our party has created such momentum behind things like moving forward on our environment.
None of us is ever going to get in a Twitter war with anyone else. If we have a concern with someone, we're going to go right up and talk to them about it. And we're not going to add unhelpful rhetoric to an already bad tone coming out of Washington.
Is there frustration that the Squad and the Twitter wars get headlines?
I don't care who has the headlines. I care about the legislation that we prioritize. I don't think any of us want to be the loudest voice in the room. I just want to be one of the most effective.
I'm down this nook, and then Mikey's just down there.
They picked offices near one another, which they say makes it easier to work together.
I wanted to be able to know that, I could swing by.
We have definitely sat around in this office. I've brought some Michigan beer into New Jersey. It's just a
place for us to sit on each other's couch and just relax.
Bonding not just over their jobs, but family.
I have 3 daughters. They are now 5, 8, and 11. My middle daughter wants to be Chrissy Houlihan for Halloween.
Is that right?
100%.
It's going to be hard to pull off. I'm not sure how she's going to do it.
Somebody said to me the other day, they said, well, you're just real down to earth. You're not, you're pretty humble. And I said, yeah, I have a 14-year-old daughter. It's really hard not to be.
When Slotkin started running for Congress, people were surprised that her husband played an active role.
In the beginning of the campaign, a lot of people would say, you guys are so modern. And, it's so interesting. And I said, what? What does that mean? They were used to either a man running for office, or there is a strong woman, but their husband is nowhere to be seen. So when they saw a strong woman and a strong man together, that was new for them.
Their previous service taught them to be fearless, which comes in handy now.
There's not a vertical chain of command structure, so at previous...
Well, there is, but obviously it sounds like you guys aren't following it. No, but no one can fire us. Except the people that elected us.
Yeah. None of us came to Congress from a district that wants us to just sit here and be quiet and learn the ropes. They want us to engage, and they want change, and they want it now.
So, there couldn't be any more fawning over these troops, or well, 3 of them were Air Force, Army, whatever it was. And then the other 2 were like in the CIA or whatever. Jesus Christ! Come on, man. Why is this? In what capacity? I can understand the whole idea of like, oh, you were troops in the, you were part of the troops, and then you're totally patriotic and you love America, all that shit. I would hope Democrats were not involved in this shit, but unfortunately, it's happening. But the whole CIA stuff is ridiculous. There's another woman. Her name is Valerie Plame. You may have heard of her. She's also running for Congress, I believe, in New Mexico. And she was outed by the chief of staff of Dick Cheney, Scooter Libby. And he was actually recently, I think, in jail. And then recently he got pardoned by President Trump. And so she's another one that's running for Congress too. So she'll probably join the badasses. That's what a stupid name. And they claim like, oh, we're not trying to be like the squad. You're trying to be like the squad, which is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Presley. But clearly, they're trying to be just like them, but they pretend as if they're not. But yeah, so like I can see, Valerie Plame, if she were elected, would probably join them too. So like they said in the segment, mainly these women were mainly elected in more or less conservative pro-Trump districts, where centrist, moderate, Democrat corporate types are more preferable. So they decide. So this is the part that kind of annoys me. They decided to be in favor of impeaching Donald Trump. So because this whole hoopla, but like the Ukraine scandal, after that brewed, now they're in favor of impeaching Trump. And because he tried to dig up dirt on Joe Biden and stuff. And this has been this is the same thing they mentioned in the segment. The same exact reason Nancy Pelosi is in favor of impeachment now. So notice, they're not in favor of impeachment when it comes to Donald Trump violating the Emoluments Clause of the United States Constitution, the Constitution that these members of the military, former members of the military, seem to care about so much. They pretend to care about so much. They don't care about the Emoluments Clause, and they don't care about the illegal war in Yemen, which, by the way, Bernie Sanders used the War Powers Act to declare it's unconstitutional. So the unconstitutional illegal war in Yemen that Donald Trump is currently waging, along with Saudi Arabia, as being Donald Trump allowing Saudi Arabia to make them his bitch. He is the bitch of Saudi Arabia, allowing them and the United States to bomb the shit out of hundreds of thousands of innocent Yemeni people. That didn't do it. So that didn't do the Emoluments Clause. Didn't do it. It did it because oh my God, they tried to burn. Donald Trump tried to dig up dirt on Joe Biden. That's terrible. Now, what was this dirt that's being dug up on Biden? It's regarding his own son, Hunter Biden. receiving $50,000 from a Ukrainian oil company. He received money from, I think it was oil or gas company. He received money from a Ukrainian company, $50,000 a month. Not $50,000, $50,000 a month. His own son received. Now, did his son work in the industry before? Did he have any prior experience, working in the oil and gas industry? Nope. Hunter Biden was receiving money from this company so that, so it was used, and this is, by the way, during the Obama administration when Joe Biden was VP. So this was essentially, he took that position so that that company could, so the company employs Joe Biden's son, gives him $50,000, and then what do? They end up getting favors from Joe Biden, Obama, and then Joe Biden's administration. So because the VP's son is working for this company, they give him $50,000 a month. By the way, that's, if you multiply that by 12, that is $600,000 a year. $50,000 a month. 50,000 times 12. That's $600,000 a year for one person. That's how much Hunter Biden was receiving because he had to work at this Ukrainian oil and gas company. So he receives that money, and then what did the Obama administration do? They give political favors to this Ukrainian oil and gas company. I mean, that's the height of corruption. That is the height of corruption that anybody with a fucking half brain can see. You can see that that's a fucking problem. And what are the Democrats doing? They're saying, oh my God, we need to defend our pal Joe Biden, our Democrat Joe Biden, because he's being called out for a completely legitimate reason, which they don't believe is legitimate, by the way, but because one of their buddies in the Democratic Party is getting called out for this, you got to go and now you can go and demand an inquiry into Trump's digging up dirt. So, and to be fair, Trump shouldn't have done what he did. Nobody's saying that what Trump did is perfectly normal and it's legal and he should be allowed to do. But what I am saying, and what progressives are saying, is that what Biden's son did and what Biden did and what the Obama administration was trying to do is also illegal and shouldn't be done. But because this is kind of stuff that just happens and it's stuff that's allowed and it's totally normal, nobody says shit. Everybody just shuts their mouth. Shush. Don't say anything, because Joe Biden is one of our Democrat buddies, and we have to protect him at any cost, especially if he's going to go and face Biden. And now this is something that Kyle Kulinski has referred to. This is essentially Clinton Foundation 2.0, and the way the Democrats are reacting to it is it's Clinton Foundation denialism 2.0, because they're using the same mentality. They are using the same exact mentality of, oh well, it wasn't, it wasn't corrupt. They were just, the Clinton Foundation was just taking money from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. It's not a big deal. They didn't do anything illegal. They just Bill Clinton went and did favors for the Clinton Foundation by giving speeches, and just on and on and on and on. It's this. All this stuff, this corruption is so ingrained in our political society that people it's so sad how they need to defend it, and now they're going out of their way to defend Joe Biden because he did a perfectly so-called legal thing, even though it is illegal in the sense that it's a conflict of interest, but it's legal in our system because bribery and money corrupting everything is legal in our system. And then I got off on a little bit of a tangent there, but I want to give my position on that. So that's why they decided to go to do an impeachment inquiry. So these 5 women also got on board and decided to do that. So that's very convenient for them, I'm sure. And then they also serve on committees which had mostly had male politicians serving as chairs. So they're using the typical identity politics route here, and they're saying, they're saying that, they're men controlling everything. No, it's women's turn. It's women's turn to control everything, even though we're going to end up pushing for the same exact system, the same exact, military-industrial complex, same exact system of where the military-industrial complex runs everything. We don't say shit. We just do whatever the powers that be have to say. We just serve them. But we're going to be females on the hopefully the heads of committees. I mean, it's just, it's ridiculous. Everything is about identity with these people, whether it's on the left or the right. Honestly, with the right, it's more about, being religious and, I'm a Christian and all that shit. But with these people, it seems to be just mostly about being a woman and then taking over men, regardless of their policy differences. And then one of them says that they won't get into a, quote, Twitter war with someone else or, quote, add unhelpful rhetoric to an already bad tone coming out of Washington, referring to Donald Trump, but also referring to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because the host, Dana Bash, asked them about the squad, which consists of Ocasio-Cortez, Omar, Tlaib, and Presley. And they said, well, we don't want to be in a Twitter war with anybody, and we don't want to add unhelpful rhetoric. So, and that's because, mainly because Ocasio-Cortez, out of all of them, for sure, AOC is the most active on Twitter and social media. So this person is saying, oh, yeah, we don't want to... we don't want to cause any problems like that. We don't want to be involved in Twitter war. So that's it's like a veiled shot at AOC, essentially. And, God forbid somebody's too progressive and outspoken, but, I don't know. Sometimes women out there say we have to be independent and outspoken. Now all of a sudden they don't want to be like that no more. And then another one of them says that none of them, referring to the five of them, want to be the, quote, loudest voice in the room, just very effective. Okay, well, obviously you're not getting into the details of anything, but and it's sad because this whole thing is like, okay, I don't want to be the loudest voice in the room, but I just want to be very effective. And again, it boils down to the very effectiveness of, allowing the corrupt system to continue existing, and then I'm just going to keep servicing that system, and I'm going to keep maintaining it and allowing it to exist, and that's all it really is about. And then another one of them says, and then another one talks about how people have said how, quote, down to earth and humble they are, even after taking veiled shots at AOC and about how she gets into Twitter wars. So. No, you're not humble and you're not down to earth. And they talk about, oh, we have kids and, they're family women and they're okay with having their husbands involved. And, that taught them to be fearless, taught them to, being in the military and stuff, that taught them to be fearless and stuff, standing up to everybody and standing up for what they believe in. Bunch of fucking ridiculous cliches and platitudes. And then finally, another one of them says, none of us came from a district that wants us to just sit here, be quiet, and learn the ropes. They want us to engage, and they want change, and they want it now. So first of all, when it comes to that whole sit here, be quiet, and learn the ropes, it's ironic that they say that, because that's exactly what people were saying to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when she first got into Congress and started to, create a firestorm, standing up for specific types of policies and pushing progressive stuff, Green New Deal and stuff like Medicare for All. And, people were like, oh, why don't you just learn the ropes? Why don't you just learn from Nancy Pelosi? Why are you being such why aren't you being such a thorn in the side to the Democrats? You should be backing Republicans more, blah, 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 all that bullshit. So, it's kind of strange now that these people are saying, well, we don't want to be quiet and just sit there and learn the ropes. But you say that to Ocasio-Cortez. Very ironic. And then they cover that so glowingly here in CNN. And then they say they want us to engage and they want change and they want it now. I guarantee you 5 women who were either in the military or worked for the CIA or whatever intelligence community, I guarantee you they're not going to push for any kind of change. They're not going to change anything. What are they changing? They're just 5 women instead of, I don't know who was in their positions before. Maybe they were men. There are 5 women possibly replacing 5 men. Okay, great. And so what are your policies, though? I guarantee you I don't know what their policies are, but I guarantee their policies, especially when they're coming from pro-Trump, red districts that are supposed to go more for Republicans, I guarantee you they're typical milquetoast, corporate right-wing type Democrats. And they're 5 white women. They're white women. Not milquetoast, but lily white women from districts that are not diverse. They don't have anything to do with, helping people of color. Oh, I was in the military. I was in the intelligence community. Oh, yeah, I totally know a lot. What I do has a lot of, what I learned there, gives me the opportunity or gives me a chance to know what it really feels like when I'm, serving in Congress or I'm serving as a politician. So they pretend. So notice the whole narrative is that because I was in the military and I'm a woman, I think the woman part is not emphasized as much, but it's more the fact that I was in the military, because they do the same thing with the men. Because I was in the military, it's, I deserve to be a politician and make big decisions, because I was making the big decisions on the battlefield, and I was making big decisions in the secret room that I was in when I was working for the CIA or the NSA or where the hell she was. And the woman part is just like a little extra cherry on top of identity politics, to be like, oh, look how strong these women are. They're so strong. They're so whatever. They're so brave, and they fought for the military, and they fought to defend us from the bad guys, and blah blah blah. It's like a fucking superhero story. So I can't stand this, man. This CNN. This is more an ode to how terrible CNN is, and how they want to normalize the deep state and normalize neoliberalism and centrism, and pretend as if, hey, the fact that the fact that our military veterans and deep state operatives are getting involved, they must know everything better than everybody else. They must know everything. They must be experts on every situation regarding government, and they're very competent in handling these situations, and everybody else just doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. So CNN is doing their best efforts at just sucking up to the deep state and trying to boost them up and pretend as if they're, wonderful, and everything they do is great, and the troops are so wonderful, and we need to honor the troops. Like, just like, stop it. Nobody relates to this other than the people that are fucking troops. That's fine. If you like that, that's good for you. But that doesn't mean that just because you're in the military doesn't mean you get to go and make decisions, in favor of, big time decisions in the government just because you were in the military, just because you were in another branch of the government, military government, and now you're in the legislative government, means you're a perfect fit for that. But ironically, they're not, because they're going and deciding that you need to be in favor of impeachment just because a Democrat was, a Republican president dug up dirt on a Democrat. That's all it pretty much is. And on top of it, they're also not, like I said before, they're not going against the fact that the illegal, unconstitutional Yemeni war, which is killing hundreds of thousands of innocent people. You were members of the military, but yet you're okay with the U.S. military going and being involved in those wars. You're not saying shit about that. You're just talking about a politician digging up dirt on somebody, which, in his defense, in Trump's defense, he's right about what Joe Biden and his son did, but at the end of the day, and even though what he did was wrong, but if that's the only thing that's going to motivate you to demand impeachment and not an unconstitutional war, the Constitution you claim to care about so much, and the emoluments, which is also in the Constitution, which basically means that you can't use your presidency to affect your business dealings and what's happening in your businesses, whether it's his Mar-a-Lago golf resort and his Trump hotels and shit like that. They don't say shit about that. They don't say nothing about that. They don't say nothing about illegal wars that are happening. They just care about the fact that a Democrat is getting dirt dug up on him. That's it. So at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of partisans. It's just a bunch of partisan corporate Democrats who are sticking up for their fellow Democrat, in this case Biden, who's running for president, and also, meanwhile, they're going to push for more wars. They're going to, support all the wars that we're in. Going to push for more moderate, centrist type policies that nobody wants. and neoliberal and centrist policies that nobody supports, and they're going to pretend as if everybody's in support of them because they're troops and former troops and they were in the CIA or whatever. Get the fuck out of here. CNN, shame on you. Shame on these centrist corporate Democrats that can't stick to their principles and just want to do whatever they're told by Queen Pelosi over there, who declares something should be done. Finally, she declares impeachment, and it's based on something that happens to affect one of their friends in the Democratic Party. Fuck out of here. All right, guys, that's going to be the end of the Progressive Square today. Thank you so much for watching. Before we get going, don't forget to check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/ProgBlacksmith. If you can become a patron, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, remember, if you want more information about this podcast, check out #TheProgSquare on Twitter. That will direct you to all of my live broadcasts on Periscope, as well as every segment I post on YouTube. So thank you so much for watching, and we are going to see you next time. Take care, everybody.